Hello everyone. Welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started.
What if Banished Naruto built his own empire and became strongest emperor? Before video started, do like, share and subscribe to the channel and comment down your favorite part. Story started. Flashback Konoha main gates. They had just returned from the Uchiha retrieval mission. The entire group that had gone were beaten and heavily injured. Shikamaru, Rock Lee and Kiba were injured, but their wounds were minor compared to those of Choji and Neji. The Sand siblings even had to help carry the two of them back to Konoha. Naruto, however, had the worst of the injuries. A Chidori wound the size of a soccer ball was embedded in Naruto's chest. The Kyuubi was healing him, but the evidence of the wound was still there. Kakashi had to carry Naruto the entire way back to the village. Despite the injuries, the group was successful in its mission. The Uchiha was in tow, unconscious and carried in Gaara's sand tomb. Sasuke also received major injuries during his fight with Naruto. The Kyuubi's burn marks on his body were self-evident. His chakra levels were depleted and his cuts were deep. A crowd had gathered to the main gates to see the group return. The other Konoha 11 had shown up as well as Tsunade. The crowd that had gathered saw the burn marks as Sasuke as he was released by Gaara. They knew that it could only be the Kyuubi's doing. "Murderer, look at what you've done to the only Uchiha," yelled one villager. "That boy needs to be locked up. Konoha is in danger if he gets loose," yelled another. "I say we get rid of him now before it's too late," yelled a pink-haired villager as others started to agree. The crowd would turn into a riot if it wasn't for Tsunade. "Enough," yelled Tsunade. "Any villagers who defy the Sandane's law will be executed immediately." Tsunade was seriously pissed that villagers supported the Uchiha traitor over Naruto. She gave off so much killer intent that the crowd immediately dispersed. Tsunade ordered that Naruto, Choji and Neji were to be taken to her private quarters for immediate treatment. Sasuke was to be locked up and would receive treatment last, considering Tsunade could care less about the Uchihas at the moment. Once the Anbu had taken everyone away, Tsunade ordered Kakashi and Shikamaru in her office when she was done with Naruto, Choji and Neji. Hokage office. Tsunade was able to give immediate medical attention to all three shinobi with little complication. In fact, Naruto had healed up so much to the point that all he needed was rest. Choji and Neji needed much more work, but would make full recoveries and be released to the care of their families the next day. Tsunade now sat in her office, physically and emotionally tired, but needed to know the details of the mission and called Shikamaru and Kakashi. Once there, Shikamaru explained the challenges that they faced while trying to prevent Sasuke from defecting. He made sure to detail everything that he saw, but also informed Tsunade that she was better off asking the others once they were treated. Kakashi told Tsunade about the most pressing concern, how both Sasuke and Naruto had fought and heavily injured each other. Just as he was about to start, Danzo, Homura and Kaharu had barged their way into Tsunade's office. "What is the meaning of this?" Tsunade yelled, not liking the way her advisors walked into her office unannounced. "Calm down, Tsunade-sama, we are just here to listen to the reports that your shinobi were giving. We as the elders need to be here to help you make some important decisions going forward," explained Danzo, as the three took their positions behind Tsunade. "TCH" was the only response Tsunade gave before having Kakashi explain. He explained about how the fight between the two went. They fought each other as though they were going to kill the other, holding nothing back. Naruto had tapped into the Kyuubi's power and Sasuke had activated his cursed seal. In the end, neither had won. However, both did inflict the maximum amount of damage they could without killing each other. Kakashi added that he believed Naruto had won, using the power of the Kyuubi to stop Sasuke from defecting. Though he couldn't control it, he was successful in incapacitating the Uchiha, which allowed them to return him home. Tsunade seemed to accept the debrief, however, her advisors were not so keen. They were worried about the Kyuubi coming loose again. The fact that Naruto couldn't control it only worried both Homura and Kaharu. In addition to the fact he had harmed the last Uchiha, they were not concerned about the fact that Sasuke had almost defected. Danzo, on the other hand, loved hearing this type of report. Although he outwardly was wary, on the inside, he almost couldn't contain the excitement of possibilities that the boy possessed. Naruto was Danzo's ticket to the Hokage seat and was going to become his ultimate weapon, loyal to only Konoha. Tsunade couldn't deal with this stupidity at the moment. She ordered everyone out of her office so she could think about her next move. Unfortunately, the next moves were already in motion, which would change Konoha's future forever. Streets of Konoha. Naruto was out of the care of Tsunade a couple of days after they returned. Due to the Kyuubi's healing, his wounds closed quickly and he felt really good. Good enough to walk the streets and get some ramen, despite Tsunade's orders to stay in bed. As he walked the streets, he noticed his friends sitting in yakiniku queue. They were all huddled on one table, discussing the events of the past couple of days. As Naruto got closer, he was about to say hello until he heard their discussion. That Baka nearly killed Sasuke-kun. What kind of person does that to our precious Sasuke? Yelled two bimbos who had pink and blonde hair respectively. Mendokus, you two really are pieces of work. You do realize that Sasuke was leaving the village, right? Shikamaru retorted, annoyed at the way Sakura and especially Ino were talking about the situation. Well, he didn't have to go batshit crazy and almost kill him. Screamed Ino. If it wasn't for Naruto, your precious Sasuke wouldn't even be in the village right now, Shikamaru said, with Choji nodding in agreement as he'd put another piece of steak in his mouth. Are you seriously defending him right now, Shikamaru? He nearly killed all of us. He lost control. It looked as though he was the Kyuubi reincarnate himself. Kiba butted in. How can you not be defending him right now? You do realize what the council is going to do to him, right? This is our friend we are talking about, Kiba. A friend that we all used to cut class with and played pranks on the village with when we were little. Don't you remember that, Naruto? Shikamaru said with disgust. Though he did realize that Naruto was a Jinchuriki and had lost control, Shikamaru was smart enough to know that Naruto was a person he still considered a friend. I do remember that, Naruto, but that was before I knew what type of monster he would become, replied Kiba, which sparked a heated debate between Shikamaru, Kiba, Sakura and Ino. Even Choji butted in to back up Shikamaru. The others on the table though remained silent. Hinata, Shino, Neji, Lee and Tenten couldn't bring themselves to speak. Hinata was too nervous to say anything. Shino didn't know how to approach the matter with this teammate and other classmates. Tenten barely knew Naruto and wasn't there for the mission to give an opinion. Neji and Lee, on the other hand, didn't know what to say. Despite the fact that Naruto had made a tremendous impact on both their lives, when it was time to defend him, they swallowed their words. They didn't know how or what to think of the situation. It was a mistake they would regret in the future. Naruto, on the other hand, was in shock. He couldn't believe that some of his friends would blame him for what happened to Sasuke. He also noticed the silence that came from the others. He thought they were all friends, especially after what he had just gone through. With the villagers, he could deal with their hatred towards him. However, seeing people who he thought were his friends attack him or stay silent on the matter left a large wound in Naruto's heart. As he was about to leave, an Anbu appeared before him and ordered him to go to the council room. It was here that Naruto had gotten the worst news of all. Present-time council chambers. Genin Uzumaki Naruto, Tsunade started, trying to power through the orders she was about to give. You have been hereby vanished from Konoha, Tsunade stuttered, which sent shocked Naruto to the core. Why? Tsunade Bachan, why? Naruto squeaked out. Because of your actions during the Uchiha retrieval mission, you brat. You nearly killed the last Uchiha from Konoha. A council member from the civilian side spoke. We can't risk letting that thing get loose again. We should have killed you while we had the chance, yelled a pink-haired council member. To think the Yondaime wasted his life for you disgusts me. We should have banished you long ago. If it wasn't for you, the Uchiha would have never left. Enough, Tsunade yelled as she slammed her fist on the table. Naruto, you have until tomorrow to pack your things and leave. Tsunade managed, trying to withhold the tears that would soon fall. Naruto, confused and angered, decided to make one final stand. So you're going to banish a loyal shinobi for a traitor? Is that it? I bring your precious Uchiha home to you and this is the thanks I get. Naruto started, the Kyuubi chakra starting to emit from his body. The civilian council members started to get nervous while the shinobi council prepared for the worst. You will regret today. From now on Konoha's days are numbered. I will make sure that without fail, this village burns down to the ground at my hands, Naruto said as his eyes started to red as the chakra started to become thicker. Two Anbu appeared behind Naruto and knocked him out. With that, the Kyuubi's chakra dispersed. The council seemed to rest a little easier now. Take him back to his home. He has things to get in order, Tsunade ordered as the two Anbu shunshin Naruto and themselves away. That boy talks big, however his words are as meaningless as his skills. Like he could really do anything to any of us, one councilman spoke as he recomposed himself. You do realize that boy single-handedly managed to bring the Uchiha home. If it wasn't for that boy, your precious Uchiha would be with Orochimaru planning this village's destruction. I would choose your next words wisely, councilman. If not, that seat you sit in will be empty the next time we meet, Tsunade threatened as the councilman looked away, trembling in fear. Now everyone can get the fuck out of my office. Naruto's house. Naruto found himself in his house as night had fallen. Loud cheers could be heard from the streets as villagers and shinobi alike celebrated the return of their precious Uchiha and also of the news that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was going to be banished. Naruto believed that everything he had experienced was just a dream until he read the note that was left for him near his bed. It was the official order of Naruto's banishment. Naruto couldn't believe it. Not only did his friends betray him, but also the village that he called home. He wanted to become Hokage so that people would accept him for who he is and not for who he carried inside of him. But if this is what the village wanted, he would definitely make sure that it would burn to the ground. And by his hands only, Naruto packed everything he needed for his journey. During his packing, instead of thinking of all the good things that he did for Konoha or even the very few people who saw him as a human being like Ayame and Tuki, he thought of all the mean things and poor treatment he received from the village. He remembered the vile words that the villagers said about him when they returned from their mission. He recalled the numerous times that villagers made sure that their children wouldn't talk to him because he was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He remembered that he was called the dead last and would never make it as a shinobi. He remembered everything. Naruto wouldn't wait to leave the village by sunrise. He would leave immediately. However, he had one last parting gift to Konoha. The village wanted a celebration, they would definitely get one. He snuck into the armory and got as many explosive tags that he could find. Being a prankster had some perks. He set up the tags all around the village. He also set up tags around his house, making sure to destroy the great memories he had in it alone. He bid it farewell, took his things and went to the top of the Hokage monument. As he stood atop the Yondaime's head, Naruto took one last look at the bustling village. He was disgusted at the celebration that was taking place. People celebrating a traitor and the banishment of a loyal shinobi. As soon as the anger grew within him, Naruto activated the tags. A series of explosions all around the village caused a panic and a frenzy. His house exploded and almost made the entire building collapse. Naruto could only chuckle at the destruction he had just caused. The celebratory cheers were now turning into panicked screams as the shinobi were trying to make sure people were safe. Naruto left a note on top of the Yondaime's head. It was left for whoever found it to know that it was he who activated the explosive tags. This is only the beginning, Konoha. Your days are numbered. Be prepared for the destruction at the hands of the dead last, he said to himself as he vanished. After leaving the village, Naruto wandered around Fire Country for a few days. Though he left the village earlier than expected, Naruto really didn't have a specific location he was locked on going to. He had brought a map but deemed it a little too hard to read at the moment. However, as long as he was out of Konoha was fine with him. Unfortunately, he started to get hungry after running out of his supply of instant ramen. He decided that he needed to stop and get some food before continuing his journey. He entered a small trading outpost on the outskirts of Fire Country. No one seemed to notice or pay any attention to him as he entered. He looked for a food place and his luck would have it, there was a small ramen shop. It wasn't overly crowded so Naruto was able to get his food quickly. When he entered, he noticed two figures wearing long black cloaks with red clouds. As Naruto sat down to eat he could feel the aura of two figures standing there watching him. He was almost going to say something and ask them if they wanted anything, but unfortunately, the smell of ramen and the feeling of hunger overtook the young shinobi. Once he finished about 5 bowls, he paid, then exited. He noticed that the two figures that had been watching him were now gone. As Naruto continued on, he entered a narrow road with many trees within its surroundings. Naruto seemed to be the only occupant on the path. Just then the two figures jumped out of nowhere to confront the young wanderer. Uzumaki Naruto, the holder of the strongest Biju, the Kyuubi. You will need to come with us, spoke one of the figures who held a large sword covered in bandages. I'm sick and tired of people ordering me around. The only way you'll be taking me is over my dead body, replied Naruto as he scowled at the two figures before him and took a defensive stance. Well, that was the plan, grinned the figure with the sword. He prepared to strike Naruto until something interfered with him. Wait, Kisame! Naruto, where is your hit I ate? And why are you alone all the way in these parts? Where is your squad? Asked Itachi as he took off his hat that was concealing his identity. What squad? As you can see, I no longer associate myself with that disgusting village. You're Itachi, right? Sasuke's brother. You know some might have called me a hero for what I did, but instead, this is the thanks I get. Banishment, scowled Naruto as the venom in his voice was really evident when talking about Konoha. Why were you banished? Surely the village wouldn't have done something that stupid to let loose their most powerful weapon. Questioned it curious Itachi. Oi, Itachi, we don't have time for this. We need to capture the Gaki. Dead or alive, chimed Kisame as he had grown anxious at the chance to brag that it was he who captured the strongest Biju. Itachi waved him off and motioned for Naruto to explain. And boy did Naruto explain. As he finished his explanation, he made it known to Itachi the hate and anger he felt towards the one who caused his predicament. If it wasn't for your piece of shit brother, I wouldn't be in this mess. But now where were we? You said you wanted to capture me over my dead body, right? Let's see if you guys are really to be feared, said Naruto as he got into a defensive stance. He would not go down without a fight. With pleasure, replied Kisame as he grinned with the delight. Itachi, however, had to think about what he was about to do. On one hand, he was tasked at capturing the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and bring him back. However, after what Naruto explained that it was his little brother that was causing all this trouble and also the corruption that was going on in Konoha, Itachi couldn't help but mull over his choices here. In the past, no matter what the circumstances were, he was always loyal to the village first. He would do anything for the village, as evident by him massacring his entire clan. But now he was starting to think on his own for once. Using his own consciousness, Itachi started to think that maybe all of this evil and corruption could have been stopped had he made different decisions when he was in the village. He decided that he would be making his own decision for once. As Kisame swung Samahata down onto a weaponless Naruto, Itachi shushined in front of the young blonde to block the attack. Itachi, what the hell are you doing? You know what our orders are, we need to bring the kid in, said Kisame in shock that his own partner was defending the boy. I know what the orders are, but there will be a change of plans. We will not harm the boy nor will we take him back to the hideout. I know we've been partners up to this point, but this is where we part ways, replied Itachi as he took a fighting stance and faced his partner. Just as they were about to come to blows, both found that they were unable to move. Kuchiyos, Gamaguchi Shibari Toadmouth Bang. Jiraiya had come out of nowhere and ensnared both Akatsuki members. Naruto, Itachi and Kisame were surprised at the arrival of the Toad Sannin. Jiraiya had been watching the ordeal from a nearby tree. He was returning to Konoha after doing his research. He sensed the powerful chakra that had been emitted from afar and waited to observe the situation. Jiraiya had heard about Naruto's banishment through a scroll that Tsunade had sent. Via one of his messenger toads, Jiraiya became livid not only at the stupid council but Tsunade as well for her inability to do anything. On the flip side, Jiraiya knew that he was entrusted to be Naruto's godfather and guardian, yet he was not there for him. Instead, he was off indulging in his research and other pleasures. He never knew how hard of a life Naruto lived, and when they first met he thought very little of him. However, as time grew on, Naruto had shown Jiraiya the same determination and will that Jiraiya had seen in Minato. Jiraiya had now regretted not being there for Naruto and vowed to make it up to him by teaching him everything he knew and also telling him of his heritage. Though his current situation was sticky, Jiraiya vowed that he would do anything to make sure that Naruto would one day fulfill all of his dreams. As both the Akatsuki members were stuck and unable to move, Jiraiya used this opportunity to charge up 2 Rasengans and was ready to end the lives of 2 of the strongest shinobis alive until Naruto stepped in front of him. Jiraiya was caught off guard. "Naruto, move. Do you know who they are? If we don't finish things right now, our situation will be bad," exclaimed Jiraiya as he looked at Naruto bewilderedly. However, Naruto would not move. He explained to Jiraiya Itachi's change of heart and wanted to believe that there was still good in the Uchiha. Jiraiya eventually relented and released the Toad prison. Naruto, out of the goodness of his heart, asked both Itachi and Kisame to join him on his quest to destroy Konoha. Though he was wary of the 2 missing nin, he saw that they were not as bad as they seemed. Itachi accepted quickly and gave Kisame the option of joining or dying where he stood. Kisame finally relented after much pleading from Naruto. "I guess this new mission could be fun as well. I think Samahata would appreciate some fresh bait," conceded the shark shinobi. "Arrow Sennin, what about you? Will you join me in my journey to not only get revenge but rid this world of more corruption so that the peace you always dreamed of can happen?" asked Naruto as he wanted the person he saw as a grandfather figure in his life to join him as well. Like Itachi, Jiraiya was torn. Konoha was home to him. No matter how long he was away from the village, he would come back and enjoy being in the place where he grew up. He made so many memories in the village that it would be hard for him to leave. But after seeing the way Naruto was treated and the corruption that was brewing in the village, he accepted Naruto's offer. Plus he knew if he lost track of Naruto again, Minato and Kushina would make his experience in the afterlife very miserable. "So where do we head off to now?" asked Kisame since they were now nomads and had no place to really call home. "Maybe to Kiri. We can help with the war there. I happen to know a few of the rebels opposing the current Mizukage, including Maid Terumi," spoke Jiraiya. "Kiri would be too unstable right now. Maybe laying low in one of the smaller villages would be a good start." "The Land of Iron would be an place," added Itachi. "Let's head west," said Naruto in a dull voice. "I overheard some messengers talking about that they almost died when they got close to the Great Wall." "Naruto, you can't be serious. No shinobi from the east has ever gone there and made it back to tell their tales. Plus that place is just non-stop fighting. Though the 4 of us combined may be strong, but we wouldn't stand a chance on our own in the west," explained Jiraiya. "Well, I would take my chances there than being hunted by everyone we see here," replied Naruto. "Plus maybe we can form an alliance or something with one of the groups out there. Well, we could lay low there. No one would dare try to find us, and maybe by our luck we could rule the west." Haha, joked Kisame with that last part. This only gave Naruto more motivation to head west. If he was to get revenge on Konoha, he would have to become stronger. The west seemed like a good place to start. Itachi saw the look of determination in Naruto's eyes and saw that his mind was made up. "It's settled then, we will head west," spoke Itachi to break the silence. Meanwhile, Konoha Hokage's office. After Naruto left, the village was placed on high alert. The little prank that Naruto pulled reduced some areas of the village to rubble. In particular, parts of the Uchiha residence and also the Hokage Tower. Emergency crews were searching for people that may have been trapped under the rubble. From what they could tell, there were a few that were injured but no casualties. Tsunade had a feeling inside of her that this may have been Naruto's doing, noticing that his apartment was also destroyed, but she couldn't blame the Gaki. He was banished for no good reason. On top of that, the people in the village worshipped the traitor he saved. After his banishment, Tsunade had gotten so drunk that no one, even Shizune, could reach her when the explosive tags went off in the village. Shizune and the Shinobi Council had to take charge to get emergency crews out to make sure people were safe. When Shizune had told Tsunade about what had happened, she could have cared less. She couldn't believe the stupidity of both the Civilian Council and the Shinobi Council. Not to mention her so-called advisors, who were more of a hindrance than anything. Tsunade became so distraught and was sick and tired of the people in the village that she had prepared to resign from her duties as Hokage. Unfortunately, she knew that there would be a fight for the Hokage title and most likely that Danzo would inherit it. Tsunade knew that the village would surely be destroyed if Danzo ran it. She didn't really care, but inside of her, there was still a small soft spot for Konoha. That is why she had picked the perfect candidate to lead. The only thing was being able to convince him. Then the knock on the door came. Come in, you called for me, Hokage-sama, asked Kakashi as he made his way to the center of the room. Yes, I did, Kakashi. I have important matters to discuss with you, Tsunade said as the copy ninja sighed a little bit. If you were talking about my mission, it was a dead end. In fact, I felt like I was going on a wild goose chase if anything. Even Yamato stated that it was a waste of our time, Kakashi explained. I could care less about your mission, Kakashi. In fact, I don't even remember assigning you any mission, Tsunade said. An Anbu was sent to me with a message from you with an important mission. I was beginning to wonder how legit it was, but it had your signature. Anyways, that's beside the point. Can we talk about this later, Hokage-sama? I'm tired and would like to visit my students, Kakashi finished as he turned around to walk out. Kakashi, that's why you're here, Tsunade said as Kakashi stopped in his tracks. You're going to want to hear me out, Kakashi, as the copy ninja turned around to face the slug Sanin. Naruto's been banished, Tsunade stated bluntly as Kakashi got wide-eyed. His calmness had now turned to anger. He's what? Kakashi questioned. Tsunade went on to explain the entire story. The civilian council, as well as the elders, wanted to banish Naruto for losing control of the Kyuubi and nearly killing Sasuke. She also mentioned how the Shinobi Council also partially agreed to the banishment due to their concern of Naruto being unstable and losing control. When Tsunade finished explaining, she was breaking into tears. Kakashi, on the other hand, was furious. And you couldn't do anything stop this. Are you kidding me? And now you're leaving me with all of your problems to deal with here. I won't accept this, Tsunade. Kakashi yelled, angered at Tsunade's inability to stop the banishment. This is not a request, Kakashi. This is a fucking order. You know as well as I do that Danzo would most likely become Hokage if I step down. Do you know how bad that will be for the village? Do you know how many people he's going to be sending out to look for Naruto? He's going to use the Gaki as a pawn in his plans. Jiraiya has already said that he's looking for Naruto, but I'm going to go and look for him myself. Kami knows Minato and Kushina are tossing in their graves right now, knowing that the village banished their son for a traitor and I couldn't do anything about it. I have to fucking live with that for the rest of my life, Tsunade started as Kakashi decided to hear her out. This is a temporary assignment, Kakashi. I'm going to find Naruto and when I do, you will be the first to know. In the meantime, besides Shizune and Jiraiya, you are the only one I trust right now. You will be communicating with me about everything that goes on in the village. You want to help Naruto, you need to make sure that none of the scumbags from this village ever try to lay a hand on him. Naruto does not want to return to the village. He made that very clear. When I find him, I will let you know and then you can come to see your student. Kami knows you may be the only one he trusts, Tsunade finished as Kakashi pondered the thought for a moment. On one hand, he was furious at Tsunade and her inability to do anything as Hokage. On the other hand, being Hokage himself would let him protect Naruto from the village. Kakashi knew that Danzo and others from the village would most want Naruto for their own power. He would ensure that he would hold things down and make some wholesale changes to both the shinobi and the civilian council while Tsunade and Jiraiya looked for Naruto. The moment you find him, you will let me know so that I can leave this forsaken village, Kakashi seriously said. The moment I find him, you'll be the first to know, Tsunade responded as the two prepared and discussed their plans. With Naruto, Jiraiya, Itachi and Kisame were heading west towards the Great Wall that separated the west from the shinobi world. They were traveling incognito and were not seen as they made their way through Iwagakure. After a few days of traveling, they finally made it to the wall during the dead of night. The wall was long, but not very tall. From what the four could observe, there were many different entrances into the west along the wall. They decided that they should camp out at one of them to try and see if they could find any weaknesses. Unfortunately, there were people patrolling the wall, both on the ground and from up high. The four shinobi decided that they needed a plan to get over the wall or through it without being detected. We need to scout the place to find its weak spot. I can't believe there are so many guys for one entrance, Kisame said, a little surprised by the heavy guards that were patrolling the area. Don't worry about that. I have already let my contact know where we are and if there is anything he can do to help us, Jiraiya explained, intriguing the other three. How do you know people from the West Arrow Senin? Naruto curiously asked. I concur, Jiraiya-sama. It would have been nice to know this information beforehand, Itachi added. Well, he's not really a contact, as I only met him once and it was at least a few months ago. Secondly, he's an interesting fellow. I'm not sure if he is to be trusted, Jiraiya explained. Then why did you tell where we were? That'll get us killed, old man, Kisame furiously said. He's only one guy and there's 4 of us. I'm sure he won't be a problem if he does become our enemy, Jiraiya retorted. Then, there was a large bang at the entrance. The gates to the entrance had blown open and several men flying out of it. The guards on the top of the wall dropped down to try and contain whoever or whatever it was that destroying the entrance. As the guards attacked, they were sent back flying left and right. It was as though whoever was attacking wasn't even trying. The 4 shinobi hid behind some trees and bushes to get a better look. They were very surprised by what they saw. A man with a bald head, in a yellow one-piece jumpsuit with a golden buckle on his belt with a white cape, was knocking everything in sight. He was moving so fast that Itachi could barely pick him up with his Sharingan. The guards stood no chance at even touching him. The last guard literally took a shit in his pants before being punched way up in the sky. Once the dust settled, the man looked bored. He seemed really uninterested in the events that just occurred. He was scanning the area, looking for something. Is that him, Jiraiya? Kisame whispered, not wanting to be heard, and only got a nod in response from Jiraiya. The 4 shinobi were shocked at the ease in which the man took out an entire squad of heavily armed guards without dropping a sweat. He would most certainly become a problem if he were to be an enemy to us, Jiraiya thought. He decided to step out into the open and get the man's attention. Anyo, excuse me, he started as the man turned around to look at him. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Jiraiya nervously said, as the man was still staring at him, studying him. Oh, it's you, was the man's dull response. Thank Kami, you remember me. I guess you got my message. Thanks for meeting us here, Jiraiya said, still unsure of the man and his intentions. Yeah, well, if you want to come, follow me, the man said as he turned around and started walking through the once guarded entrance and what was left of it. Jiraiya signaled for Naruto, Itachi and Kisame to come out and follow him, as they slowly walked behind Jiraiya's contact. As they walked, Jiraiya caught up with the man and introduced him to the other 3. They found out his name was Saitama. He and Jiraiya had met because he had accidentally jumped over the wall during some training and landed in the east. He was lost and Jiraiya just so happened to be the one to give him directions. He thanked him and walked with Jiraiya for a bit, the 2 telling stories. Before he returned to the west, Jiraiya had given Saitama a copy of Ika Ika Tactics, which the latter fell in love with. A pervert at heart, Saitama gave Jiraiya a contact card, in case he ever wanted to come to the west to advertise the book. Naruto, Itachi and Kisame could only facepalm when hearing this. There are perverts in the west too, they thought. Itachi wanted a little bit of background of the west as they continued on. Just as Saitama started, a group of bandits appeared out of the forest and attacked. They were ordinary bandits, trying to make a quick buck. There were at least 20 of them, all carrying some type of weapon. Saitama, Jiraiya, Itachi and Kisame easily dispatched most of them. However, Naruto was in a bit of trouble. 2 bandits were teaming up and giving Naruto a really hard time. They had backed him into a corner, and Naruto had already used up most of his clones. One bandit was distracting Naruto with a sickle and chain, forcing Naruto to dodge and deflect the attack. The other was sneaking up behind an unsuspecting Naruto, who lost track of him. He was about to slash Naruto when out of nowhere, Saitama punched his head and knocked it right off the bandit's body. The lone bandit now tried to run, only to be cut down by Kisame. Are you all right, Naruto-san? Saitama asked as Naruto looked at him nervously and responded with a head nod. You need to be more aware of your surroundings, Gaki. This is life or death. You could have gotten killed, you know, Kisame added, a little disappointed that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was so weak. Calm down, Kisame. With how Naruto was treated in that village, it is no surprise his skills are not up to par yet, Itachi cut in, with Naruto feeling a little embarrassed. Well, if we're going to survive here, we can't keep looking out for him as we defend ourselves, Kisame responded. Itachi knew Kisame was right. If the rumors about the West were true, the 4 shinobi and their new comrade would be in non-stop fighting. If they wanted to increase their chances of survival, Naruto would need to improve his skills, and fast. Itachi looked at Jiraiya for some guidance, but the Toad Sannin was a bit lost in his thoughts. After a few moments, Jiraiya snapped out of it. He had a plan. Naruto would train with all of them. Jiraiya and Itachi would train Naruto to improve his ninjutsu. Kisame would help Naruto learn kenjutsu and also how to properly use and manipulate his large chakra reserves. Saitama agreed to help Naruto with taijutsu, though he explained it would be hard to spar with him since he has the ability to kill people with just one punch. Naruto agreed without hesitation. He knew he was still weak and that there was so much more that he could improve on. He wanted to make Konoha pay for his banishment by turning into the deadliest and strongest shinobi known to mankind. Saitama picked up on this as well. He realized that Naruto had something about him that stood out. He couldn't exactly put his finger on it, but he knew that there was something about the young blonde that told him he would be great one day. As the group continued on, Saitama went back to explaining the history of the West from what he knew. So here in the West, it's just non-stop fighting. He started as the four shinobi listened intently to what he was about to say. That's all I know, he finished. ... The four shinobi deadpanned. They were very disappointed with that explanation. Saitama explained that he knew there were some factions in the West, but didn't belong to any and was basically a loner. His explanation: they talk too much and have long explanations. I find that boring. The four Eastern shinobi nearly fainted at the stupidity of his reasoning. Jiraiya could only massage his temples, thinking of a certain Nara who was the same way. So you have no allies here whatsoever, Naruto gasped, getting a nod from Saitama in return. They were doomed. Coming to the West seemed like a mistake now, Naruto thought. The group continued walking into the forest. They decided that they should set up camp for the night, with 2 at a time as guards. They found a little campsite area that looked abandoned. They set up 2 tents that they could use for rest if they weren't on guard duty. Unfortunately, none of them would be getting any sleep for the evening. As the group settled in, Naruto and Jiraiya had gotten the first watch. They had lit a fire to keep themselves warm for the night. Out of nowhere, the group was surrounded by 8 figures. All had taken fighting stances, as Naruto and Jiraiya did the same. One of the shorter figures stepped forward. His face became visible due to the campfire. He looked like a teenager, maybe 4 to 5 years older than Naruto. You are trespassing in Ryazanpaku territory. State your business. You are trespassing in Ryazanpaku territory. State your business, the young man said as Itachi, Kisame, and Saitama made their presence known. They also readied themselves for battle, but something felt off. Especially for Itachi, who had his Sharingan activated. He noticed something different about these strangers. Their chakra levels were different. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Their power levels were spiking off the charts. We mean no harm, Jiraiya stepped up to speak, although a bit nervously. He realized that they were outnumbered, and even though they were strong, these people seemed stronger. We are new here, we have come from the east. We did not realize we were trespassing on anyone's lands. Please forgive us for our intrusion. If you would like, we can leave immediately, Jiraiya finished as the young man looked at him with a cocked brow. Oh, and where will you go after? He asked. Jiraiya pondered for a moment. There really was nowhere else to go from here. They could turn back and try their luck in the east again, but that wasn't really an option considering Naruto wanted to come west. Unfortunately, they were all out of options at this point. It seems like we will have to turn back and return to where we came from, Jiraiya said, which got him a disappointing look from Naruto. Itachi and Kisame reluctantly agreed with Jiraiya's assessment. There was no way they could find a place to stay in the West, especially if everyone they met were like the people they were surrounded by. The young man just observed the 4 Eastern shinobi and Saitama before nodding his head. He noticed the disappointing look on the young blonde's face as he dejectedly started to walk back to his tent and start packing his things. The rest of the group did the same as they got their belongings together and started to break down the campsite. They never noticed the large figure approaching the area. My, what is all the commotion about tonight? Spoke the figure as the young man who was observing Naruto turned around to greet the new visitor. Ah, Elder, we had some intruders here at the campsite. They seem to be strong fighters from the east, but they have come in peace. They were just packing their things and leaving, he said as the elder now stepped closer, observing the group. Where will they go? The elder asked. They said they will most likely return home. Grandfather, said a girl, who had long, blonde hair. The elder seemed to accept that answer before he had an idea. A small grin crept on his face as Naruto and the others were just about done with getting ready to leave. Nonsense, the elder started as the Eastern Shinobi turned to see who this new person talking was. We have plenty of lodging here for them to stay at, the elder said, looking in the direction of the Eastern Shinobi. Excuse me, elder, although I do respect your idea, we do not know these people. They are strangers, and could be spies from one of the warring states, the young man said. Nonsense, Ken-chan, they have said that they mean no harm. I'm sure they are all good people. Am I right? The elder asked as the Eastern Shinobi bowed their heads while Saitama just nodded. Not to mention they can pay the mandatory 10,000 ryo fee per person it is to stay here, the elder whispered as Kenichi could only shake his head. It's always about the money, the young apprentice thought. We would be honored, sir, but we do not want to be a hindrance to you and your people, Itachi spoke as the elder started to laugh. A hindrance? Don't worry about that. You have no place to stay and have traveled far. You all must be tired. Plus, it's dangerous to go back out there at this time of night. Bandits have been known to frequent the area. So please come, at least stay for a few days so that you can rest and continue your journey, the elder said. Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, and Naruto huddled before making their decision. Saitama was left standing by himself, still looking bored as ever. What if this is some type of trick to get us and then rob us of all we have? Kisame asked. Well, not like we can do anything about it anyway. They outnumber us and their strength looks far superior to ours, Itachi answered. Jiraiya and Naruto agreed with his answer. It was a lose-lose regardless. However, they decided that they would be on guard at all times and that they would only stay for a day or two. They then broke the huddle. If it is no trouble, we would like to accept your kind offer, Jiraiya said as the elder was ecstatic. Wonderful. Now, before you can lodge here, however, there is one more important matter to discuss, the elder said, now in a more serious tone. The shinobi were prepared for the worst. There is a fee for staying in our dojo. It will be about 10,000 ryo fee for each of you, the elder stated as the shinobi dropped their heads in disappointment. They knew it was too good to be true. They definitely didn't have 50,000 ryo to fork over, and even if they did, that means they would be completely broke in a totally foreign area. Not to mention that now, they could be scammed out of a place to stay. Now, don't look so disappointed. Even if you don't have 10,000 ryo for each of you right now, I'm sure we can come up with some kind of plan for it. The elder said as Jiraiya started to fidget around his pocket. He took out his wallet and started to count how much money he had. He was a bit shocked at the amount and turned to the others with a small smile on his face. I have 50,000 ryo exactly, Jiraiya said, taking out the money and handing it to the young blonde girl who stepped up to take it. She counted it and nodded her head to her grandfather. Perfect, it is settled then. Please follow us back to the compound so we can show you to your rooms, the elder said as the Eastern Shinobi and Saitama did as they were told. They were followed by the 8 figures as they made their way to the large compound. The compound was huge, probably as big as some of the shinobi family compounds in Konoha. The compound of Ryazanpaku had 2 large buildings that were used for housing and other miscellaneous purposes, while the dojo was even bigger than the 2 buildings combined. There was also a hot spring in the forest in addition to the campsite. There was a large main gate at the front, and a little down the street from the compound was Ma Kensai's acupuncture clinic and Kuetsuji's orthopedic practice. The Eastern Shinobi plus Saitama were each given a room in the main building. They had makeshift beds made for them and were given privacy away from the other masters of Ryazanpaku. Although, there would always be a master on watch of their new guests just in case. The Eastern Shinobi and Saitama made themselves comfortable in their new arrangements. Though they made plans of always being alert and on guard, they felt that this place was a bit different. There were little occupants in the compound other than the masters, the elder, and the young men and woman. All of them remained up that night, not being able to get any sleep. Well, all of them except Naruto. He was beat. The journey here to the west took them long enough, and then having to deal with so many different things, Naruto needed sleep. He knew that in the future, he may not get much of it, so getting the most of it now was the best he could do. The next morning, Naruto awoke to the bright light of the sun hitting his face through the window in his room. Compared to the last few days, today seemed like a beautiful day. He sat up, rubbed his eyes and went through his morning routine. He found Itachi, Jiraiya, Kisame, and Saitama sitting in the living area, all sitting on chairs. It was evident to Naruto that they did not get any sleep. "You're finally up, Gaki," Jiraiya said, smiling to the young blonde as Naruto nodded. Itachi, Kisame, and Saitama looked up to see the young Jinchuriki approaching them. "How was your rest, Naruto?" Itachi asked. "It was good, probably the best sleep I've got in the past few days," Naruto responded. "Good, because that is probably the most sleep you're going to get for a while, Gaki," Kisame added, which got a head nod from Naruto. As they all sat down in silence, a knock came at the door of the living area. The door slid open and the young man from the previous night entered along with the young woman. "I hope we aren't interrupting anything," the young woman asked. "Nothing at all. We were all just waking up," Jiraiya responded with a weary smile. "Perfect. Well, we would like to properly introduce ourselves to you all before anything else. My name is Mu Furinji and this is Kenichi Shirahama. We are students here at Ryazanpaku. We know you all might be a little suspicious of us, and to be honest, the feeling is a bit mutual. However, you are our guests. And since you are our guests, we have prepared breakfast for all of you if you would like. We didn't know what you wanted, so we prepared plenty of options for you." Mu finished as Naruto perked up at breakfast. The group was a bit hungry and hadn't eaten in a while. Breakfast sounded like a terrific idea. They all got up and followed Mu and Kenichi to one of the rooms in the dojo where the breakfast spread was laid out. Everything from eggs, bacon, potatoes, vegetables, baked goods, cereal, milk were all laid out nicely on the table for them to choose from. Naruto's mouth salivated at the great-looking food, though the table looked like it was missing something. "Anyo, do you guys have ramen by any chance?" he asked, much to the chagrin of Jiraiya. "Oi Naruto, just eat the food here. They are not our servants," Jiraiya scolded. Mu could only chuckle a bit at the request. "We do have ramen actually. However, if you would like some, you will have to wait for lunch or dinner," she answered, which Naruto perked up at. He couldn't wait for ramen at his next meal. "Please eat. I would hurry before the other masters arrive. We prepared a lot of food, but they will clean us out easily," Kenichi said as the Eastern Shinobi hurriedly went to get their food. Even Itachi and Saitama were eager to start eating. As they all sat down, the 8 other masters and the elders started to trickle into the food area, and just like Kenichi said, the masters started to clean house with the food. The group noticed how fast the masters ate and how they immediately went for more. In fact, the masters ate so fast that the Eastern Shinobi group barely even saw them put the food into their mouths. They were amazed that even a small thing like eating made these Westerners people that they should fear. Naruto was even more amazed. If he wanted to become strong here in the West, it seemed like this was the place to do it. He would need to convince Jiraiya that this was a place they needed to be at and that they should stay as long as possible. After breakfast, Mu and Kenichi took the group to the main room in the dojo. They had mentioned that the elder wanted to speak to them. When they got there, the elder was already waiting for them. As they entered the large room, the group sat in the center of the dojo, in front of the elder, while Kenichi and Mu sat off to the side of the room. "My apologies at breakfast. I know we didn't get to properly introduce ourselves to you all. Usually, when we get guests, my granddaughter and Ken-chan cook up quite the meal for us all. It's a real treat and we know that it won't last, so we must eat as much as we can. Anyways, that's beside the fact. My name is Hayato Furinji. I am the elder here at Ryazanpaku. I know you have already met my granddaughter Mu and Ken-chan. What are all your names?" The Eastern Shinobi went down the line and Saitama also gave his name. "Well, it is nice to formally meet you all. Ken-chan here tells me that you all seem like strong fighters from the East. If I may ask, what brings you here to Ryazanpaku?" Well, elder, specifically we are from a village called Konoha. We are escaping persecution at the hands of many dangerous people there," Jiraiya explained as this piqued the interest of the elder. "Oh, and why might you all be suffering from persecution? Have you all done something you were not supposed to?" he asked. "No, elder. We haven't done anything wrong. We also didn't mean to trespass on your territory. We are just looking for a place to lay low. There are many people that want to use Naruto, Jiraiya explained. And why would people want to use young Naruto here? He seems like a good boy who hasn't done anything wrong, the elder stated. He was banished for doing his job, Elder, Jiraiya said. I'm not sure I understand, the elder questioned. Jiraiya turned to Naruto. It was now his turn to speak. Naruto explained the situation he was in, how he was set with a squad of his peers to make sure that one of their own didn't end up in the hands of Orochimaru. Naruto explained that they were successful in their mission. However, he had lost control of the Kyuubi, who had been sealed inside of him. He explained that people in the village are scared of him and treated him poorly because they thought he was the reincarnate of the Kyuubi. Naruto explained his childhood growing up, how he never had anyone to really look after him, and how he just wanted to be accepted by everyone. He had a dream of being Hokage of his village, but now that dream had been crushed. Itachi felt pain and disappointment when Naruto explained his life. He was very disappointed in not only the village, but at himself for what had become of both Naruto and Sasuke. The elder Furinji could only look on in astonishment at the story of Naruto. He didn't understand how people could be so stupid about things like these. Mew was quietly crying, listening to Naruto's predicament that he was put in. Kenichi also was disappointed and saddened for the young shinobi and the life he had to live. When Naruto finished, he could feel that anger boiling up inside of him again. Just talking about it made bad memories come back to him. He remembered everything that was said about him by not only the villagers, but also people he thought were his friends. He remembered those final words that he spoke at the last council meeting. He would make sure Konoha would burn at his hands without fail. The elder Furinji studied the young blonde boy for a minute. He could see the anger in the boy's eyes. He could also see the hurt. He also saw that Naruto loved the place he grew up in. Despite the hate he received, he could tell that Naruto never gave up on his dreams and goals that he'd put forth for himself. Though they had just met, the elder had already sensed that this young boy was going to do big things in the future. Maybe, just maybe, he is the one, the elder thought. I do apologize for your circumstances, young Naruto. No one, especially one so young, should ever go through what you have. However, I must tell you, here in the West, all we know is fighting to survive. I'm sure you all heard the stories of this place. Most of what you've heard is probably true, the elder stated as he started to explain the history of the West. The West has never seen peace. Where you all come from in the East, there are periods where there is little to no fighting. Here in the West, we are lucky if we get a week off. There are factions and warlords here that cannot be compared to where you all are from. In fact, I would be so much to say that if you all, maybe besides Saitama, were to go out on your own here, you wouldn't last a month. Though you may be considered strong in the East, here in the West, you are just in the middle of the pack in terms of fighters, the elder explained. The Eastern shinobi were now a bit discouraged at this. Even Kisame was a bit worried about their chances here. However, I do see potential in all of you, especially you, young Naruto. You have a strong determination and will inside of you that no matter the circumstances, you push on. You have your values and you stay true to them. You have not been given the proper training yet, but you have the potential to be strong, even stronger than any of the masters here in this dojo. Naruto perked up at hearing this. After stepping foot in the West, he didn't think he would ever match up to anybody here. However, hearing the elder say that he had the most potential out of all of them, stirred that determination in Naruto even more. Originally, the plan was to let you all stay here for a few days. However, I see now that you all will be a tremendous asset to not only this dojo but to everyone here in it. I have made the decision that you may all stay here for as long as you like. As long as you agree to abide by our rules and fight for our side, you will always be welcome here. I see that we have similar values. I understand you want revenge on your village, but you also have a dream of peace. We also are fighting for peace. Quite frankly, I think it is time the West sees its share of that. We have only known fighting, but I do think that you, young Naruto, can make that dream a reality. Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame and even Saitama were shocked at the elder's words. Naruto was not strong at all, yet the elder saw how much untapped potential the young blonde had. I thought after all this time that Minato was the child of prophecy that the old geezer Toad was talking about. I was wrong. Naruto is definitely the child of prophecy, Jiraiya thought. We are gracious of your kind words, Elder. We will abide by your laws and fight by your side and be any kind of assistance we can be, Jiraiya said as he bowed, which the others soon followed. No need to bow in front of me, Jiraiya, or any of you. We are comrades now. We will all train together in our fight for peace, the elder said as he rose and went to greet the group in the center of the room. He shook hands with each member and strongly gripped Naruto's hand. Naruto flashed a shy grin, still a bit in shock of the elder's words. I cannot fail. I will not fail. It's time to start counting down the days, Naruto thought. Few months later, though the Eastern Shinobi plus Saitama was allowed to stay and train, the elder never said it would be easy. Just moments after their meeting with him, the compound of Ryazanpaku came under attack from a neighboring warlord. Ryazanpaku sprung into action, defending the compound with all they had. True to their word, Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, Saitama, and Naruto all joined in the fight. It went without saying that the battle was lopsided, with Ryazanpaku winning easily. Yet it was evident that despite his potential, there was plenty of work needed to be done in Naruto's case. He had trouble holding his own against one opponent. His training began immediately. For the past few months, Naruto received training around the clock every day. Whether it was with Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, Saitama, or even Kenichi or Mew, Naruto was going at it. He had a rotating schedule every day of training that he would receive. If they were not fighting a neighboring clan or faction, Naruto was training. It was true that he got little sleep. However, the training was starting to pay dividends. Naruto was more than holding his own against multiple opponents. His ninjutsu skills were improving, his taijutsu was improving, he even started to hold his own against Kisame with a sword. Naruto was no longer a weak link. If anything, he was now a competent fighter. The only thing that didn't seem to be improving was his chakra control. His chakra was all out of whack because of the Kyuubi. Jiraiya had been loosening the seal on the Kyuubi, letting little by little of his chakra out for Naruto to use, yet nothing seemed to work. The chakra was a bit too strong for Naruto, even with Kisame helping him. There were a few times where Naruto nearly lost control, allowing the Kyuubi to take over him. Luckily, Jiraiya had his Fuinjutsu to slap onto Naruto before things got out of hand. Naruto was frustrated, to say the least. The damn Kyuubi was being hard to control. If he could just tap into the Kyuubi's power, it would allow him to become stronger so much faster. He cursed the stubborn Kyuubi, complaining about being stuck with him for the rest of his life. What Naruto didn't know, however, was that the Kyuubi had been watching him from the inside. The Kyuubi was observing Naruto, getting an eerie feeling that reminded him of someone. It was soon time to make his presence known once again. While Naruto was resting in his room one day, he was taken to his mindscape by the Kyuubi. What the hell? Where am I? Naruto asked himself as the Kyuubi crept his way to the bars that trapped him in. I've summoned you here, Yaki, the Kyuubi said, which forced Naruto to jump back. Damn you, it's you again, the one that's caused me all of these problems my entire life. Naruto yelled, cry me a river, Yaki. You can blame the Yondaime for that. Anyway, that's beside the point and not the reason I've summoned you here. Then why the fuck am I here? Naruto asked, pissed that the source of his problems brought him here. Because I have been watching you. Seeing you go from an idiot prankster to a competent shinobi in just a few months. It's interesting to watch you humans grow. I would grow a lot faster if it wasn't for you. Eros Sennin said my chakra is all out of whack because of you, Naruto retorted to the Kyuubi. Like that old pervert knows anything about me. You could easily control my chakra, but you're still weak. You're even weaker than my previous jailer, the Kyuubi teased, only making Naruto madder. Look who's talking about being weak. Aren't you supposed to be the strongest of the Biju? Yet you easily got sealed by the Yondaime. Who's the weak one now? Naruto retorted, are you trying to anger me, Gaki? The Kyuubi rose up, teeth showing. Did I make you angry? Isn't that cute? Between us, I'm not the weak one here. I'm your jailer. I decide whether to let you out or not. So why don't you be a good little inmate and shut up? Naruto teased, making the Kyuubi fuming mad. I should have killed you when I had the chance. If it wasn't for your parents, you definitely wouldn't be alive right now. Raged the Kyuubi. My parents, you fucker. So you did kill my parents. Now it was Naruto's turn to get angry. HMPH. Why don't you ask that old pervert about your parents? He knew them very well. Maybe you'll see me a bit differently after. Now be gone, it was a mistake to summon you, Gaki. The Kyuubi waved him away as Naruto snapped out of it. What did the Kyuubi mean by asking Ero Sennin about his parents? Did Jiraiya somehow know Naruto's parents? Naruto walked over to Jiraiya's room and saw the Toad Sannin writing down some things for his new Ika Ika Tactics novel. He was planning on making a comeback here in the West. It seemed like there were perverts all over this place and he could take advantage of that and make decent book sales. Ero Sennin, Naruto asked as he walked into the room. Oh, Naruto, what can I do for you? The Toad Sannin asked as he put away his writings and turned his attention to the young blonde. Did you know my parents? Naruto asked, much to Jiraiya's surprise. Why the sudden interest in your parents, Naruto? The Toad Sannin asked. I talked with the Kyuubi. He said you would know who my parents were. You talked to the Kyuubi. How? And what did he say about them? Jiraiya asked. He summoned me in my mindscape. He didn't say much about them, just that you knew them very well. If you know something, Ero Sennin, please tell me, Naruto said. Jiraiya sighed. I wanted to do this when the time was right, but I guess the cat's out of the bag now. Come sit, Naruto. I have much to tell you, he said as he motioned the young shinobi to sit down. Jiraiya explained everything to Naruto. He explained that Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime, was his father and that Kushina Uzumaki was his mother. They both died the night that Naruto was born and that they died protecting Naruto from the Kyuubi. Jiraiya went on to explain their background and also how they had met and that he had trained Minato from an early age. He also explained the events of the night to Naruto, who was listening intently, with tears starting to form in his eyes and the anger starting to come back. Why didn't you tell me this? That you knew my parents or even that you knew me since birth? Where were you when I was an orphan? Better yet, where were you or Tsunade Ba-chan during my entire life? Naruto yelled, which attracted the attention of Itachi, Kisame, and Saitama. Jiraiya explained to Naruto the Sandame's law and how the deaths of Minato and Kushina affected both himself and Tsunade. Naruto was furious, to say the least. He was the son of the Yondaime, one of the greatest Hokages in Konoha. If people knew who he was, then he wouldn't have lived a shitty life like he had. The tears started to flow even more from Naruto now. Did they even love me? Did they know how hard I was going to have it? Having to carry the Kyuubi inside me for the rest of my life, Naruto said as the tears wouldn't stop. They loved you with all of their hearts, Naruto. That's why Minato sealed the Kyuubi in you, because he trusted and believed in you. He couldn't put the burden on anyone else's child. He was the Hokage of the village. Your parents sacrificed their lives for the village and for you. I know I haven't been a great godfather or even a great teacher for that fact. But when you told me your dream of peace, it only reminded me of your father. I've made it my goal, Naruto, to make sure that your dream of peace is realized in this world. I understand if you can't forgive for keeping this from you, but I want you to know that from now on, I am always going to have your back, Jiraiya said. As will I, Itachi spoke as he entered the room. That village spat on the dying wishes of their hero. How sickening. Naruto-san, I will always have your back, Saitama said. You can count me in, Gaki, Kisame said. Naruto's tears had stopped now. He couldn't believe the support he was now getting. This was a bit of a foreign concept to him still, yet he appreciated it. Though he didn't like that Jiraiya had kept this information away from him, Naruto appreciated that the Toad Sannin had now divulged everything to him. Naruto didn't want to let his parents down. He couldn't, not after they put so much of their trust into him. Thank you, he managed as the emotions started to overwhelm him. As time passed, the five of them returned to their rooms to get some rest. It was early morning, and tomorrow, anything could happen. As Naruto closed his eyes, he found himself back in his mindscape. He walked up to the bars that held the Kyuubi at bay. He noticed the seal that kept the Kyuubi from breaking free. What is it that you want, Gaki? I see the old pervert has told you everything. What do you think of me now? I don't know what to think of you now. You killed my parents. You nearly killed me. After hearing what Ero Sennin has said though, it has only made me more determined to achieve my goal. I just have one question for you, will you join me? I need to be as strong as possible to achieve my goal and you're one of the ways I can do that. I'll even lift the seal if you decide to help me, Naruto said, causing the Kyuubi to cock his brows a bit. The Kyuubi pondered this. He was very surprised by Naruto and how confident he sounded. He hated being sealed again into a human, especially by the Yondaime and Kushina, but the breath they produced was always surprising him. Watching his determination only increase made the Kyuubi very interested about what the future held for Naruto. I have just one condition, Gaki, he said. What is it? Naruto questioned. I get to finish what I started the night of your birth and burn Konoha to the ground, the Kyuubi said, a sly grin appearing on his face. Very well, was Naruto's answer, which elicited a large grin now from the fox. Just as Naruto was about to leave, he heard the Kyuubi mumble something under his breath. What was that? Naruto asked. Kurama. My name is Kurama, the Kyuubi answered. Kurama ha. Well, nice to meet you, Kurama. Naruto smiled as he escaped his mindscape. As he looked outside his window, he could see the full moon in the night sky. Naruto knew now what his new mission was going to be. If he wanted peace, this was the way he needed to do it. There were plenty of people who believed in him now. He wasn't going to let any of them down. To-chan, Ka-chan, I won't let you guys down, he said as he prepared for bed. Time skipped 6 years later. The West, the Emperor's chambers. Genin Uzumaki Naruto. He saw his Ba-chan giving him his banishment orders in front of the Konoha Shinobi and Civilian Council. No, Ba-chan please. You have been hereby banished from Konoha, Tsunade finished. Naruto couldn't move. Dear, said a soft voice. Murderer, look at what you've done to the only Uchiha, yelled one villager. We need to get rid of him now before it's too late. Yelled another. I was only fulfilling my mission, Naruto said. Dear, came the voice again. That Baka nearly killed Sasuke-kun. He looked like the Kyuubi incarnate himself. Hinata, Neji, Lee, Shino, Tenten, why won't you say anything? Naruto said, seeing his friends sitting in silence. Naruto, you have to wake up. Came the voice, louder this time. Naruto immediately shot up from his sleeping position. He was sweating profusely. His clothes were soaked and his side of the bed was drenched in sweat. His heart was racing 1,000 miles per hour as he tried to slow down his breathing. He rubbed his eyes before looking around the room. It was still dark, the moon illuminating through the window in the large room. It was only a dream, he thought as he looked down to see a pair of hands grab a hold of his. He looked up as his eyes met the eyes of the other occupant in the bed. Her large, violet eyes staring at him with concern on her face. Her long pink hair flowed down the entirety of her back as she sat up to look at him. She moved closer, giving him a small peck on the lips. Her hand now on his cheek, feeling the sweat and warmth that he was radiating. Silence filled the room as the two stared into each other's eyes. After a few moments of silence, she pulled him for a more passionate kiss. Their tongues fought for dominance over each other, their hands feeling each other's bodies as they kissed like wild animals. After what seemed like minutes, they pulled apart, breathing heavily after their long makeout session. Naruto laid his head down in her lap as she ran her hands through his hair. He was now calm, yet he was scared to close his eyes again, for fear of going back to sleep and see those memories. He just stared into space, enjoying the comfort of the woman's touch. I'm sorry I woke you, Yuffie, he said, still staring at nothing. It's okay, dear, she loving replied as she leaned down to kiss his forehead. The Yuffie Naruto was referring to was none other than the former princess of the Britannia family, Euphemia Lee Britannia. She is a former princess because now she is the Empress of the United Western Empire and more importantly, Naruto's wife. She was second in command, only below Naruto, and was in charge of the more civilian matters in the empire. She was kind and fair, yet strict when she needed to be, and the people loved her. They loved her just as much as they loved her husband. Over the past 6 years, things had changed drastically in the Western continent. There was no more fighting. Naruto's dreams of peace had been achieved. It took 3 long years of constant fighting and diplomacy, but the peace that had been sought after for thousands of years in the West had been realized, and the main reason was because of Naruto. He had become a central figure in what was now known as the Thousand-Year War. With the training from Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, Saitama, and Ryazanpaku, Naruto became a force to be reckoned with. No matter how outmanned or outnumbered, Naruto could easily turn the tide of any battle. His attitude and demeanor brought many strong allies to their side as well. Different factions decided to join, rather than fight Naruto due to his strength. His diplomatic abilities were also put on display, allowing there to be less loss of life. Though he was a great hero during the war, Naruto was not the first pick to become emperor. In fact, he wasn't even among those that were in consideration to become emperor. Jiraiya, Hayato Furinji, and Lelouch V. Britannia were among the candidates that were in consideration at first. However, all three had turned the nomination down due to the fact that they knew Naruto was the perfect one for the job. They all knew that he had this charisma about him that everyone loved. He had the it factor and was a natural-born leader. If it wasn't for Naruto, the war may never have ended. During this time, Naruto had met and had fallen in love with Euphemia during the war. When he had become emperor, it was a no-brainer for Naruto to ask Euphemia to marry him, which she accepted immediately. They have been happily married for 3 years as they oversee the era of peace in the West. Unfortunately, the painful memories of the past were something Naruto couldn't let go of. "You had the nightmare again?" Euphemia asked. "Yeah," was Naruto's response as Euphemia continued to play with her husband's hair. Naruto moved a bit, now facing up towards his wife. "No matter what I do, the nightmares won't stop coming back," he said as his wife leaned down with another peck on the lips. She remained close to him, their foreheads touching as the two closed their eyes, enjoying the closeness. "They will pay for what they've done to you. You should have never gone through that, especially when you were so young. I can't wait for the day when my emperor shows them that the past has a way of catching up," she finished. "In due time, Yuffie, they will find out what the former Konoha dead last can really do," Naruto said as the two remained in their bed until sunrise. While everything in the West was going well, Konoha was a different story. Konoha Hokage office. It had been 6 years since Naruto's banishment and Konoha had seen better days. Especially for the Hokage, who despite being a figure of great importance, had turned into nothing more than just a figurehead. Sitting in the Hokage seat was a man wearing a mask along with his Hidai covering his left eye. Despite being the Hokage, he still wore his Junin uniform and always carried a copy of Ika Tactics on him. He was currently in the process of trying to complete the enemy no Hokage had ever defeated. Paperwork. Kakashi sighed as he stamped yet another document of importance. He never wanted this job in the first place, but with Tsunade's orders, he reluctantly accepted. Flashback. Like they had planned, Tsunade immediately resigned after Naruto's banishment. She cited that she needed a vacation for all the shit she had to put up with. She made it clear that no one would come to look for her, or else there would be repercussions. This immediately threw the council room into chaos. Both the civilian and the shinobi side of the councils were in an uproar. This was a crucial time for them, especially with war brewing on the horizon, and losing one of their most powerful shinobi was sure to do them in. However, a few proceeded to throw their names into the hat in order to get the Hokage title. Danzo was the one who seemed like a favorite, through the use of his hidden Sharingan and also because he basically had the civilian council in the palm of his hand. Luckily, Tsunade was prepared for this. She mentioned that Kakashi would take the title as the Rokudaime, much to the disappointment of Danzo and his supporters. They wanted to challenge this appointment until the Fire Daimyo showed up and made it clear that he had approved this hire. Though the daimyo deemed Kakashi young and inexperienced, he was the best leader that could keep watch on things and also defend the village, citing that Kakashi was one of the most powerful shinobi currently in Konoha. When the Fire Daimyo left, Tsunade reminded everyone to not come looking for her. She said that there was only one person that could bring her back on her own free will. That someone was Uzumaki Naruto. End flashback. Kakashi sighed again. He could only think back to how this entire situation escalated from one thing to another. Flashback. He was sent away on a mission the moment he returned with Naruto and Sasuke from the Uchiha retrieval mission. The mission was handed to him by an Anbu he didn't recognize. However, the mission scroll was signed by Tsunade herself. He had no choice but to comply. it was not a coincidence that he was sent away so quickly after he returned. When he returned to find out that Naruto had been banished, he was furious. He wanted to go after Naruto and tried to resign, but he was coerced into staying by Tsunade. He was the only one she trusted and needed him to help her give any information about Konoha's actions towards Naruto, knowing that Danzo would do anything to get his hands on the boy. They immediately went to the Fire Daimyo and convinced him and his court that this was the right course of action. The Fire Daimyo didn't have much say when it came to shinobi affairs and had not been notified of the vote to banish Naruto. He was disappointed, but his hands were tied. However, he approved Tsunade's request of handing the mantle of Hokage to Kakashi, despite some of his reservations about the copy ninja's qualifications. When he became Hokage, he found out that the village had lost all of the alliances they had in place. Wave, Spring, and Suna had torn up the alliances once they heard of the details surrounding Naruto's banishment. Naruto had made a great impact on each one of these nations. It had brought Konoha in a good light to see that one of their own was making a great impact in other nations. However, when Naruto was banished for a traitor, their allies had lost all respect for Konoha. This made Kakashi think of all the people he failed to protect: Minato, Kushina, Rin, and Obito. During this time, he was reminded that despite one's personal loss, he would always need to be loyal to the village. The village held the will of fire to help those who have lost family or comrades to continue on with their lives. What bullshit! Tsunade convinced Kakashi to become Hokage, but he had every intention to skip town once Tsunade contacted him about Naruto's whereabouts. Unfortunately, weekly reports started to turn into monthly reports, then every few months he would get another report. Finding Naruto was harder than Tsunade imagined. Until then, he would have to manage being Hokage to the best of his abilities. What made it worse though was that Konoha was now being led by a jonin with little political experience in a time where war was brewing. Kumo, Odo, and Iwa had formed an alliance together and were beginning on their assault on the eastern lands. The power-hungry Raikage and Tsuchikage agreed to this alliance purely for larger land territories and resources for their villages. Konoha was also a prime target since it was still considered one of the powerful shinobi villages. Yet without Jiraiya's spy network and their Jinchuriki, they were anything but powerful. Konoha also had no one who could really face off against Orochimaru by themselves, even though many claimed they could. The Snake Sanin brought both Kumo and Iwa together in hopes that he would return to Konoha and become its destroyer. Despite his earlier disappointments, Danzo took advantage of Kakashi being appointed the Hokage. He knew that Kakashi wasn't strong enough nor experienced enough to lead. This allowed Danzo to do as he pleased from the shadows like he always did. When his squad of Root Anbu that he had sent out to find Naruto after the banishment order returned empty-handed, Danzo's plans hit a setback. Yet he knew that he just needed to buy his time. He knew that once the people saw that Kakashi wasn't fit to be Hokage, it would be him that would take the mantle and lead Konoha to greatness once again. Before Tsunade resigned, Kakashi thought a little bit about being appointed Hokage and figured maybe it would be a good thing to have some power. He could change things that his Minato-sensei wanted to happen and also protect Naruto in some way. How wrong he would be. His first day on the job, the civilian council voted to put Naruto and Jiraiya in the bingo book. When Kakashi found out about this, he immediately ordered them to undo it. Tsunade had been able to keep Naruto and Jiraiya's name out the bingo book during her tenure through threats and physical violence. However, with Tsunade gone now, the council saw it as their window to act. Then he came to find out that the civilian council had somehow reinstated Sasuke Uchiha into the shinobi program. Kakashi tried to overturn this decision, but again the council voted in favor, though there were those in the shinobi council who vehemently opposed this. Then the following month the civilian council came together to enact the Clan Restoration Act for the Uchiha. Sasuke had requested that he rebuild his clan and would like to enact the CRA. Since this was considered more a civilian matter, the civilians held the most influence on the decisions. Sasuke had originally chosen Sakura Haruno as his main wife. However, once he saw a change Hinata sparring with her team, he immediately took a liking to how strong she became. He thought that she would produce him powerful offspring to bring back the might of the Uchiha clan. He chose Sakura, Ino, Tenten, and Anko as secondary wives. He had chosen them out of pure lust, only wanting them for their bodies and heirs that they would produce. A big wedding was to be held for Sasuke and Hinata, all funded by the civilian council themselves. The shinobi were furious, Inoichi Yamanaka and Hiyashi Hyuga, especially, since it was their daughters that were to be married to the traitor. Anko was also opposed, stating she'd rather fuck Orochimaru than the Uchiha. Hiyashi, with his quick thinking though, had Hinata go on many diplomatic missions outside of the village to improve village relations, but more to stall the wedding until the shinobi could find a way to end it altogether. Although they had supported the decision of banishment initially, there were some on the shinobi council who had regretted their decisions on the matter. The original Ino Shikacho was one of them, Might Guy, and also Hiyashi Hyuga. They knew that Naruto carried the burden of being the Kyuubi. Most of them at first wanted nothing to do with him, despite knowing who his parents were. It was only after he was banished that they started to see the impact he had made in others' lives, including their own children. Speaking of their children, the Konoha 11 had also changed during the years after Naruto's banishment. Sasuke was sentenced to house arrest and forbidden to study the arts of the shinobi until she saw it fit to release him, which would have been never. Tsunade had imposed this punishment, and when the council tried to undermine her authority, the fire daimyo showed up and reinforced the law. He also added a stipulation that if anyone was caught to help the Uchiha, they would publicly be executed along with the precious Uchiha. Sasuke's house arrest only made him more thirsty for power. He realized that the Dobi had matched him and that if he wanted to kill Itachi, he would need more power. He vowed that he would become the most powerful shinobi on earth. A god among men, he thought. From his house, he also got a look at Hinata Hyuga during her beatdown of Kiba and Shino. He saw how powerful she had become in such a little time and wanted her to produce his offspring. Sasuke also knew that Hinata still loved Naruto and that if he could steal her away, he would be dealing a blow to the Dobi. Sakura had never gotten over her Sasuke obsession. She visited him every day while he was in the hospital and during his house arrest, despite his cold attitude towards her. Eventually, she was placed on a different team but still would proclaim to everyone how her Sasuke-kun was the greatest ever. Despite being a huge Sasuke fangirl when she was younger, Ino had grown out of her obsession with the Uchiha. A while later she heard that Sasuke actually tried to leave the village and saw the mission reports of what he had done to Naruto. It was then that she decided that he was not worth her future and instead focused on training with Shikamaru and Choji. They had all made Chunin at the next exams that were held in Suna, despite the hostility they received by the Sand and its shinobi. They also regretted turning their backs on Naruto in his time in need, Ino included. They had hoped they would meet him again one day and ask for his forgiveness by any means possible. Team Guy had all become Jonin within a couple of years after Naruto's banishment, and all had their very own genin squads. Neji and Lee had made up their minds that they would become the best shinobi they could for Naruto's sake. They never forgot what he had done for them, and despite some of their friends turning their backs on Naruto, they decided to do the right thing and honor him whenever they could. The one that changed the most, however, was Hinata. When Naruto was banished, she shut herself out from everybody. She had locked herself in her room for nearly 2 weeks. When she came out, she transformed from the shy, stuttering girl to a cold and ruthless fighter. It didn't matter if you were a friend, family, or just a plain stranger to Hinata. You talked shit about Naruto and you would get your ass handed to you. 2 Hyuga main branch members learned that the hard way. Kiba also never shied away from insulting Naruto when he got the chance, and while Shino remained quiet, it felt as though he thought that banishment wasn't the right decision. When Hinata resumed training with her team, they sparred with each other, which resulted in Hinata nearly killing both Kiba and Shino. She used her gentle fist more aggressively than Kiba and Shino had ever seen before. She was only stopped when Kurenai and Asuma combined put her down before she actually killed her teammates. Hiyashi saw the change in his daughter and was growing very concerned. Though he was the one who pushed her to become stronger, he didn't like how she eventually turned out. He truly did love her and only pushed her so that she would one day be a great clan head. He started to miss her shy demeanor that he had come to know and love, even though he never showed it. The Hyuga elders also saw that Hinata was getting out of hand and harder to control, so they forcefully moved to brand Hinata with the caged bird seal and put her in the house branch. Hiyashi was opposed, but the elders overruled his judgment. Funny how elders and councils seem to have more power than clan heads or the Hokage. Interesting. Hinata was then chosen to be the main wife of Sasuke Uchiha, which the Hyuga elders immediately accepted. Having offspring with two of the most powerful Kekkei Genkai would be their ticket to becoming the most powerful clan in Konoha and also, in the future, the Hokage seat. Hiyashi's father was the one who led the biggest push for Hinata's arranged marriage, only seeing his granddaughter as the ticket to the Hyuga being immortalized. End flashback. Kakashi snapped out of his thoughts when a knock came to his door. "Come in," he said as a squad that he handpicked came into the room. "You called for his Hokage-sama," spoke Asuma as himself. Kurenai, Ino Shikacho 2, Neji, Rock Lee, Tenten, Kiba, Shino, and Hinata entered the paper-filled office space. Kaharu, Homura, and Danzo also entered behind them, though they were uninvited. Kakashi paid them no mind though. "Yes, I did. I don't need to remind you all that the village has been going through some rough times. We have lost many of our previous alliances and are in desperate need of new ones. I have chosen all of you for this mission. It is an S-rank mission of the utmost importance," spoke Kakashi as his voice sounded considerably tired and worn out. Even though he half-assed the Hokage job, it still took a toll on him. Though he was still young, taking the Hokage position really aged him. "I have managed to gain an audience with the West." The shinobi and elders in the room were shocked. The empire to the west had only surfaced a few years ago. They heard the war stories of the West and couldn't believe that now it was a unified continent. Members of the Konoha 11 also perked up at this because there were rumors that the West was where Naruto had gone after his banishment. Not to mention that the Konoha 11 had met the Emperor a few times in battle. They did not know it at the time, but almost all of the Konoha 11 had fought him and were defeated. He knew how they fought and easily picked them apart as though they were a play doll. Only when the Uchiha had met the Emperor in battle and returned to Konoha in serious condition did they find out that the man with the Tengu mask was the Emperor of the West. It seemed strange to Kakashi that the Emperor would welcome the envoy from Konoha despite their earlier meetings. However, in desperate times Kakashi needed to take that chance to gain an ally. Any ally would do at this point, or else Konoha would eventually fall. He also held out hope that Naruto would be in the West. Now, like I said, gaining allies is very important. This village cannot go through a war without any help. We are going to be targeted soon, and if we fight in our current situation, we won't stand a chance, Kakashi explained. If you have gained an audience with the West, then it would be best if I also went with the group to see if they are strong and powerful like the reports have stated. Danzo spoke, though he also wanted to see if the West could be overtaken once Konoha had won this war. Kakashi looked at the old man with a questionable look. He knew Danzo would be up to something, but he didn't know what. "I think it would be a good idea, Hokage-sama," spoke up Kaharu. "Danzo has expertise in observing power and would be a valuable asset on this mission," she stated as though the decision was already made. Kakashi wanted no arguments and just agreed. "I see, I guess it wouldn't hurt. Just make sure none of you do anything stupid to anger the West. The mission is to gain allies, not make more enemies, understood?" As he looked directly at Danzo with that last part. "Very well, Hokage-sama, I will be taking Sasuke Uchiha and Sai with me as my protection detail," Danzo said flatly. Hinata and Ino grew nauseous at the mere mention of the Uchiha. "What's wrong with this group right here? You have more than enough protection with this group of shinobi," questioned Kakashi. "Oh, there is nothing wrong. I just believe that in order to further ensure my protection, the Uchiha and Sai should also accompany me," explained the one-eyed elder. "Very well, you have 1 hour to pack your belongings and you will set off immediately after that. The future of Konoha is in your hands," Kakashi stated, then dismissed everyone from his office. As he looked out the window at the Hokage monument, Kakashi got this ominous feeling that the mission he had just set up would fail and that the past would soon catch up to Konoha. "Minato-sensei, please forgive for everything that has happened. I've failed in protecting both you and Kushina. I failed in protecting Rin and Obito. And now I've failed in protecting your son," Kakashi thought to himself as tears started to fall from his eyes. He took off his Hidai and wept in his office. Despite having no more love for Konoha, this was a place that gave Kakashi so many memories. He found parental figures in Minato and Kushina. He found teammates who he actually cared about. He was given students that were different from the others that he even grew attached to. He was still suffering from some indecisiveness. Konoha was always his home and he fought tooth and nail to protect it. Yet, it was the fact that Naruto was his responsibility and he failed his sensei and his sensei's wife. They would never forgive him. He needed to make up for it somehow. He wanted to make sure Naruto was safe and to make sure he found out about his true heritage. As the Hokage was letting out his tears, an ominous figure observed him from a safe distance. He grinned under his orange, spiral mask and shunshin to another part of the village. The figure ended up in the Konoha cemetery. He found the graves that said, Rin Nohara, and, Obito Uchiha. He saw that the flowers had just recently been replaced from the last time he had visited. He took the flowers from both graves and crushed them in his hands. After taking one last glance at the gravestones, he disappeared. Emperor's chambers. The sun was now shining in the large room. Naruto and Euphemia hadn't moved from the position they were in. It was almost a routine for them whenever Naruto had his nightmares. They would stay up until it was time to start their day. Though she would sometimes be tired and needed her rest, Euphemia knew it was her duty to make sure her husband was okay. She would even sometimes take over his responsibilities for the day if he felt he needed to be alone. Husband and wife were talking about random things before a knock came at the door. Naruto groaned, knowing who it was without even getting up from Euphemia's lap. "No, Walter. Please give us like another 20 minutes, Naruto yelled as the knocks only came louder. Walter, I said no. Euphemia could only giggle at her husband's antics. The door opened anyway. In stepped a tall, thin man. He was wearing black pants, a white dress shirt with a purple tie and a purple vest. He was wearing white gloves today and his hair was in its usual ponytail. He had a soft grin on his face, amused at the young emperor's antics this morning, though he was used to it. I apologize, Naruto-sama, but you have a council meeting today and you told me yesterday that no matter what you say, to wake you up without fail, the butler replied as Naruto buried his face in Euphemia's lap and groaned. He most definitely did tell him that and for good reason, but Naruto was in no mood to do anything right now. Another figure soon joined the three others in the room. She rode in on her wheelchair, with a soft grin on her face as well. She could hear her brother-in-law from down the hall, knowing all too well the mood he was in this morning. "Mi-chan, it's time to wake up," she said strongly as Naruto unburied his face to look at her. He could only sigh in defeat. It was going to be a long day today. "Hi, Nunnally," Naruto said as his tired look turned to a smile as he saw his sister-in-law. Naruto had a large soft spot for Nunnally. Not because she was disabled, but because of how she composed herself despite her paralysis. He saw the way she looked at life and how she never let anything bother her. Not to mention the fact that she was family now and that was something he always wanted. Having a little sister gave him a sense of responsibility to be a good example of a ruler, especially since she was one of the very first ones to put her trust in him. Well, as much as I would love to stay in this comfortable bed with my beautiful wife, it seems that duty calls, Naruto sarcastically spoke aloud as he gave his wife a kiss on the lips before getting out of bed to get ready for the day. As he got ready, there was a noticeable pop of orange coming from the open closet. No matter how old Naruto was, he could never get over his obsession with orange. Luckily Euphemia was alright with the color, yet told him he needed nicer clothes to wear to work. Naruto just stuck with a nice orange collared dress shirt and black slacks in his shoes. Nunnally joked about Naruto's wardrobe one day, that even though she was blind, the orange was almost too strong for her eyes. Simple, effective, and downright sexy, Naruto remembered Euphemia saying, which led him to wear almost the same thing every day. As Naruto finished getting ready, he went off to work. Walter followed as Nunnally stayed in the room with her sister, who also needed to start getting ready. "You really know how to pick them, Ne-sama," Nunnally joked, which got a laugh out of Euphemia. As Naruto walked down the large hall to get to the stairs, he saw Itachi looking out at the view of the city. Naruto thanked Walter for the wake-up call. "Of course, Naruto-sama," the butler bowed. "Ah, what did I say, Walter? No need for the sama. You know that," Naruto huffed as he was never one for formal greetings. The butler just smiled as he took his leave. Naruto made his way over to Itachi, who never took his gaze off of the beautiful view of the city. The sun was just about rising and Itachi could see the people in the city about to start their day. "It's a beautiful view, isn't it?" Naruto asked as he stood by Itachi, also focusing his gaze on the awakening city. "It really is. I can't believe this place was just a wasteland just a few years ago. Now, it's a beautiful city and country that we can call home now," Itachi said as he turned to look at Naruto. "I also can't believe how much you've grown, Naruto. You are a troublemaker and now look at you. You're the emperor of probably the most powerful country mankind will ever see," Itachi finished as he saw Naruto put on a smile. It was indeed a true statement. "All right, lover boys, as much as I hate to break up this intimate moment between the two of you, we do have a meeting to get going to," Jiraiya said as he appeared behind the two. Naruto just gave him the middle finger and laughed as they went downstairs to exit the emperor's palace. As they stepped outside, they were soon joined Shigeru Kasaka and Kisame. As they headed to the council chambers, the group passed a few civilians who were also starting their day. "Ohayo gozaimasu, Emperor Sama," a villager said as he bowed when the group passed. "Thank you for all your hard work, Emperor Sama," said another villager as she bowed when the group passed. A group of young children were heading off to the school and saw the group passing by. "Ohayo gozaimasu, Emperor Sama," they all yelled in unison. They followed the example of the previous villagers and bowed before the group. "Don't be late for school now," Naruto said to the children as they all yelled, "Hi." The group stopped to let the kids run off for school. Naruto could only smile at them as he watched them run off. "Ha, weren't you always late for class, Gaki? Look at how ironic that is," Jiraiya joked as Naruto elbowed him in the ribs. The group passed a few more civilians on the way and they all reacted the same way as the previous ones the group had met. Naruto had started doing this from time to time to show face to the people in the West. He wanted to be able to interact with his people and give them encouragement. It was weird at first for Naruto, getting greeted politely and kindly by others. He wasn't used to it. It kind of freaked him out to see how much people were acting nice to him. Itachi had to remind him that it was because they genuinely loved him. The people were loyal and respectful and were very grateful to Naruto for helping to bring peace to the West. After some time, Naruto came to appreciate this and began a routine to start appearing more in public as emperor. About 10 minutes went by and the group finally made it to their destination. The large council chambers building where most of the meetings were held. This is where most of the council conducted their work and also heard different complaints and disputes. Naruto had a large office in the building as well. He would conduct his business, i.e. paperwork, for part of the day. Other emperor responsibilities were held at his palace. As Naruto and the group made their way to the council room, Shigeru broke off from the group, her duties done for now. The rest of them made their way up, where the council had already gathered and were just waiting for Naruto. Western Council Room, they all stood as they saw Naruto enter the room. He took a moment to look around the room. Even after 3 years of these meetings, he still wasn't used to the attention. As soon as he took a seat, everyone else took theirs as they prepared for the meeting. "Seems like everyone is here. Let us begin," he said as everyone prepared their documents. Flashback 5 years earlier, the Thousand-Year War. No one really knew when the fighting started in the West and no one ever thought that it would stop. Battle for territory, resources, and power were all the main focuses of the war. And as luck would have it, Naruto, Jiraiya, Itachi and Kisame just so happened to get thrust right in the thick of it. They were lucky to meet up with powerful allies such as Saitama and Ryazanpaku. As promised, Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, Saitama, and the rest of Ryazanpaku went to work in helping to train Naruto. After learning of who his parents really were, Jiraiya made sure that Naruto would learn and master the art of Fuinjutsu, knowing that being able to seal would come in handy, regardless of the situation. Jiraiya also made sure that Naruto would be able to master his wind nature type. Itachi trained Naruto in being able to break genjutsu. The masters of Ryazanpaku had mentioned that there were those in the West that could get the user under their control just by looking into their eyes. Luckily, this was similar to the Uchiha, who used their Sharingan for that exact reason. Kisame helped train Naruto in Kenjutsu. Though he wasn't proficient at using a sword, Naruto was able to hold his own against one of the former swordsmen of the mist. Kisame also helped Naruto control the Kyuubi chakra. Since the chakra was very new to Naruto, it would sometimes overtake him, even with the Kyuubi not trying to do it on purpose. Kisame deduced that Naruto would need to be pushed to his limits in order to get his body used to the power of the Kyuubi chakra. Speaking of Kurama, Naruto had many talks with it on a daily basis. Naruto made sure to tell Jiraiya everything that the Kyuubi had told him, even that he had a name. Jiraiya cautioned Naruto to be wary of the beast, knowing all too well that the fox still had an agenda and that using Naruto could be a pawn in the beast's plans. Naruto, of course, was a bit curious at befriending Kurama and finding out more about him. During one of their talks, Kurama had mentioned about lifting the seal off the cage in order to give Naruto the full use of the Kyuubi chakra. Naruto was hesitant. He knew that the beast being set free could mean bad things for not only him but the others around him. He also still felt uneasy about Kurama killing his parents and all that. He needed to consult Jiraiya about the conversation. No. As your godfather and as your guardian, you are not allowed to remove that seal, Jiraiya huffed as he smashed a Rasengan into an enemy samurai. But Ero Sennin, he's allowing me to use his chakra, the least I could do is set him free. He hasn't taken over my body ever since he told me about my parents, Naruto said as he slammed two Rasengans into a group of enemy combatants. That's not the point, Naruto, Jiraiya started as he dodged attacks from a staff-wielding enemy. Jiraiya easily deflected the staff and punched the enemy across the field they were fighting on. He can't be trusted, he could be just buying his time. You even said you don't trust him fully, Gaki. What if he does take over your body, then what? None of us here would be able to stop the beast from rampaging and also none of us know the Shikifu and anyways, he finished as he started to weave signs. Kuchio's no jutsu. Gamabunta appeared as he slammed onto a squad of advancing enemy soldiers who were descending on the Ryazanpaku lands. This was the second straight day of fighting. It seemed like these guys kept coming, but with resiliency, the masters of Ryazanpaku and the Eastern Shinobi allied with them kept fending them off. You need to trust me, Ero Sennin. I promise he won't take over my body, and besides, I need to learn to master his chakra. I can't do that with him sealed. Kisame even said so himself. Naruto yelled from nearby as he summoned his shadow clones. I trust you, Gaki. It's the fox I don't trust. Look, my decision is final. You are not allowed to touch the seal. If I find out you do, I swear I'm going to make Saitama break every bone in your body and then send you to Akisame to put it back together only to let Saitama do it again. Jiraiya yelled from atop Gamabunta's head. Naruto just shivered. Though it sounded like a joke, Jiraiya wasn't kidding, and going to Akisame's orthopedic clinic was not something he wanted to ever do. Naruto huffed as he continued fighting. Eventually, the battle was won. Up to this point, there were no casualties for the side of Ryazanpaku. The training that had taken place over the years was paying dividends. They were able to defend their territory without fail. Naruto, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about lifting the seal for Kurama. He needed to do it if he wanted to get closer to his ultimate goal, which was to destroy Konoha. Yet, Jiraiya's words to him did make sense. He didn't know the fox's intentions. He still didn't fully trust Kurama, because the fox killed his parents and all that stuff. However, Naruto also contemplated that the war seemed like it would never end. Sure, they had made some allies in the first year, but it didn't feel like they were making any progress. The Ryazanpaku members were more concerned about defending their territory instead of branching out and trying to overtake others. So of course, curiosity would get the best of young Naruto. Yet, he wasn't ready for what would happen next. After a long day of training, Naruto found himself in his room. It was a quiet evening, with no fighting occurring tonight. It was one of the few peaceful nights that Naruto was lucky enough to get. He was tired, both mentally and physically. It was another day when he could barely control the Kyuubi chakra. The chakra burned through parts of his clothes, leaving large rips and patches in his orange jumpsuit. Naruto was pissed. It was already a year since he started training with Kisame to try and control the large amounts of chakra Kurama was allowing him to use. If only he could just let the fox out, things would be easier since Kurama could help him control the chakra. He was starting to not care about Jiraiya's threat. He then found himself in his mindscape. Something troubling you, Gaki? Kurama asked as Naruto appeared in front of him. How did you know? Naruto asked as Kurama laughed. I'm connected with you, remember? I can hear everything you think. I can feel everything you feel. You're back here thinking about lifting the seal again, he said. I was. If you can hear everything I think, why haven't you called me here before? Naruto asked. Well, you thought about it so much and have never come close to actually doing it, so why bother? Just know, it'll take you an eternity to control my chakra properly without my help. Kurama explained, which made Naruto very frustrated. He knew what the fox was saying was true. Naruto just sat in front of the jail cell in silence. He stared at the seal. Staring at the seal was only making Naruto angrier. After some thinking and going over it in his head, Naruto stood up. Kurama watched him intently, watching the blonde's every move. Naruto jumped up, preparing to rip the seal before getting tackled to the ground. Kurama's eyes widened, the feeling he was having felt eerily similar to the past. The fox then noticed two figures standing over Naruto. They were the source of his lengthy jail sentence in Naruto. Naruto was a little dizzy after being tackled to the ground. He didn't know if Kurama did something to him or what, but he didn't even touch the seal. As he got his bearings in order, he looked up to see two figures standing over him. He jumped back a little, startled at their appearance. A man with blonde spiky hair and blue eyes were staring at him. He was wearing a white haori with red flames at the bottom of it. He looked eerily similar to the Yondaime, but Naruto wasn't sure. Next to the man was a woman with noticeably long, red hair. She was wearing a green blouse over a white short-sleeved dress shirt. She was smiling at him, something he found a little weird. Naruto didn't know who these people were, but were prepared to fight them if needed. Kurama, if you sent these people, it's not funny. I was going to lift the seal, damn it. Naruto yelled as the two strangers looked at each other, then back at him. They looked back to see Kurama up against the bars, with a nasty look on his face. Yondaime, Uzumaki Kushina, he roared, upset by the appearance of the people who forced him here. Yondaime, Uzumaki Kushina, my parents, but how am I seeing them? They're dead. This must be some kind of illusion that Kurama is doing, Naruto thought. He was very confused. The two strangers turned back to Naruto with smiles upon their faces. They both offered a hand to Naruto, who was a bit nervous about accepting their help. However, he felt a sort of peace about them. He took their hands as they both helped him up. He's a bit noisy, isn't he? The blonde man said with a smile. Why don't we go somewhere quieter? He said as they shifted to another part of the mindscape. They ended up in a bright, yellow area. It seemed like there were no barriers or anything. As they arrived, Naruto jumped back, realizing he was still holding the two strangers' hands. Okay, just what in the hell is going on? He yelled as the two strangers could only laugh at his confusion. Kurama, if this is some type of joke, it ain't funny, ya damn fox. He yelled, which got him a hard punch on the head. Naruto yelled in pain. He thought only Tsunade Bachan could hit that hard. Don't you dare lump us with that damn fox, TT Bane. The woman yelled as she waved her fist at him. The man could only nervously laugh. Now Kushina, he doesn't know us, remember? We haven't introduced ourselves to him yet, the elder blonde said as he looked at Naruto. Are you okay, Naruto? He asked. Naruto shook off the pain as he looked to the man in confusion. How do you know my name? He asked. Well, I'm the one that named you. You are my son, after all, the man said before he too got a punch on the head. Excuse me, we named him. Don't take credit for all of this, Minato. I'm the one that had to push him out. The woman said as Minato rubbed his head too. You both named me. I'm your son. Naruto choked out. Let's do this properly, Minato. Yes, Sochi, you are our son. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. I'm your mother, obviously, she said with a smile as Naruto tried to force one out. I'm Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime. I am your father, Naruto, he said as Naruto was in a mix of emotions. This couldn't be right. He knew he was the son of both the Yondaime and Kushina, but they were dead. How was he seeing them, especially now? I know, Naruto was able to manage to say, much to the disbelief of Minato and Kushina. I see Jirei. Minato started but was soon cut off after getting a strong punch to the gut from Naruto. Even when he was dead, Naruto was still getting hit by Uzumakis everywhere. You sealed the damn fox inside of me. Do you know what I had to deal with my entire life because of that? Do you know how I was treated because of that damn thing? I even got banished because of it." Naruto yelled at his father, tears falling from his eyes. He then looked to Kushina, who only had a worried look in her eyes. She stepped forward and embraced her son, tears starting to fall from her eyes as well. "I know, Sochi, we've been watching from inside of you. We've seen how you've been treated. We know the pain that you're feeling right now," Kushina said as she cried with her son. Minato, having recovered from two Uzumaki punches, finally regained his composure. He'd put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. "We know it wasn't easy for you, Naruto. I only did this because you are my son, and I only trust you. I understand if you can't forgive me as a father, but I want you to know that I believe that you would be able to fully harness the power of the Kyuubi. Kushina and I both know that it was a mistake to leave you alone with such a heavy burden to carry. But we believe that if anyone could do it, it would be you, Naruto," Minato said as Naruto turned to look at his father. He then hugged his father, who in turn hugged him back. The family reunited, embraced in a family hug. Naruto had so many questions to ask them both. How they met, how life was in the village during their time, how much they knew about the night of his birth, and everything that Naruto could imagine. Minato and Kushina took the time to tell Naruto every detail of everything he wanted to know. They also explained to him that before they died, they had placed some of their chakra into Naruto for the future, in case he ever needed them. They also wanted to know how Jiraiya was doing in training Naruto. Minato also wanted to know how Itachi was doing, knowing that one of the last Uchihas was with Naruto. Naruto then told them both about his intentions to release the seal off of Kurama. Minato and Kushina almost had the same reactions as Jiraiya. They both were hesitant about letting Naruto do that, for fear of the repercussions from the fox. Naruto convinced both of them that if they trusted him, they would let him do it. Minato and Kushina still loved Konoha. They had made all of their memories there. Yet, after seeing how their son was treated, they both agreed that it was time to move forward and be parents for a change and support their son. They both gave Naruto a loving look before Minato brought them back before Kurama, who was still in a fit of rage seeing his former Jinchuriki and the man that sealed him into Naruto. "So my former jailer and the man who sealed me into the Gaki have come back to see me, huh?" Kurama sarcastically said as he was up against the bars of his cell. "You know why I put you there, Kyuubi," Minato stated seriously. "Oh, I do, and look what the results were because of it. You left your child an orphan and also caused him to get banished," Kurama replied. "Why Iota?" Kushina was ready to release her chakra chains on the Kyuubi before Naruto stopped them both. "Stop it, all of you. Look, I understand the hostility here, but I want both of your cooperation at the moment," he said as the two sides stopped for now. "Look, Chan, Ka-chan, this is something that I need to do. You put your trust in me and I don't want to let you down. There are things in this life that I must do. I know you both loved Konoha when you were alive, but the Konoha you know is gone. The will of fire in that village is no more. They spit on both of your legacies by treating me like shit. I'm going to make them pay for what they've done," Naruto said. Kushina was made just thinking about how Naruto was treated. Her hair started to glow and rise up as she waved her fist. "You do it, Sochi. You take it to all of them," she yelled. "No matter what path you take in this life, Naruto, we will always support you," was Minato's answer. Naruto then looked at Kurama. The fox looked back at the young blonde and just nodded. He knew supporting Naruto was the right thing to do, even though he felt some type of way about Minato and Kushina. "Come, Naruto, let's do this. Our chakra is running out. We don't have much time left," Minato said as the family made their way up to the seal. As a family, they removed the seal together, freeing Kurama from his cell after all these years. The fox grinned, then announced his freedom as he roared. He was finally free. He could hear Kushina yelling something as he looked down at the former Kunoichi. "You better take care of him or else I'll come back from the afterlife myself and sick my chakra chains on you," Kushina threatened. Kurama just huffed at the threat. "Naruto, come forward. We need to connect our chakras together," Kurama instructed as Naruto stepped forward as Kurama held out a fist to Naruto. Naruto held out a fist in return and bumped it with Kurama's. He could feel the surge of the Kyuubi chakra running through him now. He could feel it, but it wasn't hurting him. He wasn't being consumed by it. It was giving him power, a power that he didn't think was possible. When they were done, he ran to his parents, excited as could be. This elicited a smile out of Kushina and Minato. After a few moments, they noticed that they were starting to fade. Their time as a family was coming to an end. "Will I ever see you guys again?" Naruto asked, tears starting to fall from his eyes again. "Of course you will, Sochi. We will all be a family again one day. Remember, no matter what path in life you take, we will always be supporting you. We will always be with you, Sochi. Also, remember to not be picky, eat your vegetables so you can grow strong. Make sure you bathe every day, get your sleep. Don't listen to Jiraiya's perverted speeches. Find a good group of friends, find a girl like your mother, be true to yourself, and most importantly, just know that we love with all of our hearts." "Sorry, Minato, it seems I've used up all your time again," Kushina said as they were starting to fade away faster. "It's okay, Kushina. Naruto, just remember everything your mother said and you will accomplish all of your goals in life. I love you, son." Minato finished as Naruto could only watch as his parents disappear. They had smiles on their faces as they waved goodbye to Naruto and finally vanished. Naruto awoke. He was still in his room as he got up. It was morning now. The sun was high up in the sky already and shining brightly. It was a beautiful day. Was that all a dream? Or did those things actually happen? He thought as he lifted his shirt to check the seal. The seal was gone. At that moment, Jiraiya walked past Naruto's room. He saw that the area where Naruto was looking was missing something. He finally noticed that the seal was missing. "Naruto, what did I tell you about removing the damn seal?" he said as he entered Naruto's room, mad as ever. "I met them, Arrow Sennin," Naruto said as he looked up at Jiraiya. Jiraiya stopped in his tracks. "Met who, Naruto?" Jiraiya asked. "My parents," Naruto replied, as he began to tell the story to Jiraiya. High in the sky, Minato and Kushina could be seen smiling as they were looking down at their son. It was his time now. It was his time to end the war. Emperor's chambers. Euphemia was still getting ready in her bedroom as Nunnally waited patiently for her sister to finish. They had some things on their agenda, but overall, it wasn't going to be a very busy day. As she combed her hair, Euphemia looked at the pictures that surrounded the room. Some of them were of her and her family, some of them were of Naruto. There were also large pictures of her and Naruto on their wedding day, looking as happy as could be. She couldn't believe that it was 3 years ago that they got married. It felt like yesterday to her that they said their "I do's" to each other. There were so many great memories since that day, that Euphemia could hardly remember them all. "What are you thinking about, Nate-chan?" Nunnally asked. For someone that was blind, Nunnally was very perceptive to the feelings in the room. Euphemia was always interested in how Nunnally knew exactly what she was thinking or looking at without even seeing her. "Just some things," Euphemia replied, checking to see if her sister knew what she was thinking about. "You're thinking about your wedding day, aren't you?" Nunnally replied back, a large smile coming upon her face. "You know me so well, don't you?" "Yes, I was thinking about my wedding day," Euphemia said as she went to sit on the bed to be closer to her sister. "I still can't believe you married Naruto of all people. I still remember when Lelouch hated him. Like, literally couldn't stand him," Nunnally said bluntly as Euphemia let out a laugh as she had to agree with that statement. "I still can't believe he became emperor too," Nunnally added. "Well, you were one of the first people to speak up about nominating him for emperor," Euphemia slyly said. "I know. Well, he was a big part of why the war ended, and he also saved my life, Nate-chan," Nunnally retorted. Euphemia remembered that all too well. At first, she saw Naruto as nothing more than a friend. If you had asked Naruto that question, he would have said the same thing. They were friends and allies. Nothing more, nothing less. However, during the war, Naruto definitely changed that feeling for both himself and Euphemia. He also did save both their lives, for which Euphemia was eternally grateful for. She had watched him grow from a boy into a man in such a short span. As they spent time together, the two started to grow on each other. I guess when a couple spends a lot of time with each other, they are bound to fall for each other at some point. She remembered like it was yesterday. Flashback 5 years ago. It was early in their second year of the Thousand-Year War. The faction of Raya Zanpaku was making serious progress in the war. Ever since the Kyuubi and he linked up, Naruto became a force to be reckoned with. Battles became overwhelmingly one-sided when Naruto transformed into his Kyuubi chakra mode. Entire fields were leveled because of the sheer power that was demonstrated from Naruto. He could turn the tide of any battle he was a part of. No matter if they were outnumbered 5-1, the side that had Naruto would win. The side of Raya Zanpaku was able to gain quick alliances with other factions that were fighting. Most notably the Straw Hat Pirates, the Hunters, the Soul Reapers, Night Raid, the Alchemists, the Survey Corps, the Housing Organization, UA, High School and the Saiyans. They also made allies with other individuals and smaller groups like Himura Kenshin, Yusuke Urameshi, Inuyasha, and a few others. They quickly started to overtake territories that were held by hostile warlords and other powerful enemies. There was a council put in place to make sure that each ally was doing its part in the effort to end the war. Like Naruto, many of these factions wanted peace. They were tired of having to fight, not even remembering what they were fighting for other than protecting themselves. That is why when hearing of Naruto's preaching of peace, many flocked to Raya Zanpaku to join their efforts. The council that led the Raya Zanpaku alliance, as it was called, were Hayato Furinji, All Might, Roy Mustang, Integra Helsing, Son Goku, and Monkey D. Luffy. They made sure that all the work they were doing was only getting them closer to peace. Battle after battle, the Raya Zanpaku alliance came out victorious. They were on a roll, gaining territory and destroying those who threatened them. Of course, there were always those that remained neutral in the war. One of those factions that decided to remain neutral was the Britannia faction. Led by Lelouch V. Britannia, Euphemia, Nunnally, and Cornelia Lee Britannia, the Britannia faction was one of the strongest factions that didn't have many allies during the war. They were self-sufficient, having much more advanced technology than the other factions, that they didn't need to rely on gaining allies. They were, however, very protective over their lands. With their large army and air force, it was easy for the Britannias to repel invaders. They made quick work of anyone that tried to trespass in their territory. However, neutrality cannot last forever, especially during war. The Britannia faction was drawn into things when a battle between the Raya Zanpaku-led forces faced off against a large force of Titans and Millenniums. The battle was bloody. Fighting spilled over into the lands of the Britannias. The border defenses for the were on high alert and the Air Force was sent in to kill anybody, regardless if they were hostile or not. Though they were successful in getting out most of the intruders, there were some that were missed by defense forces. It was at this time that the Alliance Council had gone to the Britannias in hopes to form an alliance, even though the Council knew of Britannia's neutrality. However, the Britannias were impressed by the common goal they shared with the Raya Zanpaku alliance. It intrigued the Britannias, yet they did not come to an agreement with the alliance, citing that they wanted to keep their neutrality, though Lelouch was very tempted. They did, however, keep their communications open with the alliance should anything change. Luckily, the open communications came in handy. A few days later, a group of rogue abnormal Titans and Millenniums kidnapped Nunnally in the dead of night. A rescue team was dispatched, led by Cornelia and her Nightmare Squadron. Unfortunately, they had no luck in retrieving the Nunnally. Lelouch immediately sent a line of communication to the Raya Zanpaku alliance for assistance. Without hesitation, a squad consisting of Naruto, Itachi, Yusuke Urameshi, Gon Freezy SS, Deku, and a squad of Survey Corps members led by Levi Ackerman were sent to retrieve the kidnapped princess. The Survey Corps were sent first, trying to track where the Titans and Millenniums had gone. They had found them near the edge of the Britannia territory in a large forest. They sent a message to the rest of the group that they had located the Britannia princess. Itachi, who was the squad leader for this mission, sent Gon Freezy SS in first to lead the squad. His heightened sense of smell, vision, and hearing would allow the group to go in undetected. Once the coast was clear and the camp was detected, the group closed in. The plan was simple: get the princess out alive and in one piece. Kill anyone who resists. The group moved quietly in the trees. Everybody was in position. On Itachi's signal, they attacked. Yusuke fired the first shot. Spirit gun. Yusuke fired his signature weapon from his hand as his shot immediately dropped 5 Millennium members. Mass hysteria overtook the camp. The abnormal Titans, who were in human form, started to turn into their larger Titan form. Luckily, the Survey Corps swooped in to eliminate the few that were there. The rest of the Millennium were wiped out with ease. Itachi put the Millennium members into his Tsukuyomi while Deku and Gon provided the necessary firepower with their Delaware Smash and Jojenkin respectively. Naruto was tasked with getting the princess out safely. When he got there, Nunnally was being moved by a Millennium officer in his jeep. Naruto raced after them. He was finally able to catch up, but the Millennium officer stopped and dragged the princess out of the jeep. He held a gun to her head as Naruto stopped in his tracks. One step closer and she goes boom, the Millennium officer said as he raised the gun to Nunnally's head as he smirked at Naruto. Naruto, on the other hand, looked very unconcerned about the predicament. He had a plan for this. He knew the princess was scared. She was cut up and bruised, with tears falling from her eyes. "Hey now, let's just calm down and think about this for a second," he said as he'd put his hands in full view for the officer to see. He used this as a distraction as a clone sneaked up behind the officer. "No one has to get hurt here," Naruto said as the officer turned the gun towards Naruto. "You're right, only you," the officer said before he found himself staring at a large ball of energy coming out of his chest. Naruto's clone had powered up a Rasengan. The officer dropped right there, releasing Nunnally. Naruto caught her, as she was too weak to move. He carried her away to the rendezvous point, where he waited for the rest of the squad to arrive. They arrived with no casualties and returned to the Alliance headquarters. As Naruto carried Nunnally into the medical facility, Lelouch, Euphemia, Cornelia, and the Alliance Council were waiting for them. Nunnally's siblings rushed to her side as Naruto put her onto a gurney. They thanked him for rescuing her and followed Tony Chopper into the emergency room. She was going to make a full recovery. Naruto shared his report to the council, who shared it with the Britannias. It was safe to say that an alliance was formed immediately after that. The two sides also came up with the idea of having a liaison in order to improve their communications. One person from each group would live with the other for a period of time until the two sides felt that their communications had improved. Both Naruto and Nunnally were chosen. Naruto was chosen because the Britannia family wanted to know the person that was responsible for saving one of their own. For Naruto, he was a bit uneasy of going. He always thought of royalty as rich, snobby people who only care about themselves. Naruto didn't want to associate with people like that because they acted like some other people he knew from Konoha. However, when Naruto got to Britannia Palace, he was definitely shocked by what he saw. He was greeted by Lelouch, Cornelia, Euphemia, and Suzaku Kururugi. For the most part, they welcomed Naruto with open arms. Naruto was a bit surprised by their actions. After a few months of living with them, he noticed that they lived a relatively modest lifestyle with little to no snobbiness, none of that stuff. In fact, they were the total opposite. They were great people. He loved interacting with the royal family. The only thing that he didn't get was their rules. He wasn't royalty, so Naruto didn't have the necessary manners or etiquette that they had. He was especially uneasy around Lelouch, who seemed to scold him at every opportunity. During meetings that Naruto attended, he would often fall asleep, bored with the procedures and topics the Britannia family discussed. It was amusing to Euphemia and Nunnally, both giggling as they watched Naruto face down on the table, drooling. Lelouch would immediately yell at him, causing Naruto to wake up in a panic. Even at the dinner table, Naruto would get chastised by Lelouch for not knowing the proper procedure for eating. It was as though no matter what Naruto did, it wasn't good enough for him. Luckily, he had Euphemia and Suzaku there to help him out. It was a bit weird at first, but Naruto and Euphemia became fast friends. Both of them found out that they shared the same dream of peace in the West. Because of this, they started to talk every day and were nearly inseparable. They saw each other as just friends but loved each other's company. Naruto also found a friend in Euphemia's knight, Suzaku. The two of them formed a strong bond that definitely couldn't be broken. The three became a tight-knit group, going everywhere and doing everything with each other. Naruto also found out that Euphemia and Suzaku had some feelings for each other. Though they rarely displayed it and were not official, Naruto understood the emotions they may have felt and wished he could feel that one day. He was thankful to them that they never made him feel like the third wheel in their friendship. However, them hanging out did get them into a bit of trouble because Lelouch did not approve of Naruto. Though he was grateful that the Jinchuriki had saved Nunnally, the boy was not one of them. He was here as a liaison and that was it. He didn't want Naruto fraternizing with Euphemia or any other members of the family. The boy was here to improve relations. Lelouch couldn't wait for Naruto to be out of their hair. That all changed, however, when Naruto saved Euphemia. A few weeks later, though she was a princess, Euphemia was still one of the best pilots in the Britannia faction, and during a time of war, it was all hands on deck. The Britannias were locked in a battle over territory with an enemy faction that was nearby. During the heat of battle, Euphemia's nightmare frame, Gloucester, had been shot down. She was injured and captured by the warlord Char Aznable. The Britannias tried to negotiate a deal for the safe return of Euphemia, however, all deals were rejected. After a few days of failed negotiations, a rescue party was sent. Lelouch personally led the mission. Unfortunately, their nightmare frames were no match for the large force of Gundam suits that Char Aznable sent. The rescue party was routed. Lelouch returned home empty-handed. Their actions forced Char Aznable's hands. He made it public that he would execute Euphemia the next day because of the Britannia's actions. There was no time to gather another rescue team with the sheer size to try and combat the Gundam suits. With no other options, Naruto came up with a more subtle approach. They organized a different rescue party, this time trying to avoid dealing with the mobile Gundam suits that were more powerful than the Britannia's nightmare frames. A group of Naruto, Suzaku, Night Raid, Yusuke, and Frankie would go in quietly to retrieve Euphemia without the Char Aznable group being none the wiser. All out of options, Lelouch reluctantly gave the go-ahead. The group set out in the dead of night. They knew that Euphemia was being held somewhere in the warlord's mansion. She would be under heavy guard and they may have to fight their way through. However, Naruto figured they would have the upper hand since it would be hard for their enemy to use their Gundam suits indoors. They managed to knock out the border guards and enter the mansion relatively undetected. The mansion was large and greatly lavished. There were so many portraits of the warlord that the group wondered if it would be funny to steal all of them and replace them with erotic pictures. Maybe on their way out, the group searched the mansion without being detected. They managed to find Euphemia, but she was heavily guarded. Naruto's plan came into full effect. Night Raid easily dispatched of the armed guards. They did so quietly and effectively. They are trained assassins after all. Euphemia was chained to the wall and looked like a caged animal. Naruto was pissed at the thought of his friend being treated this way. She awoke to them breaking the chains. She had an impulse to scream, but Naruto made sure to keep her quiet and let her know that they were getting her out of there. Their mission a success, the group then made their way out of the mansion with the princess in tow. Unfortunately, a few guards making their rounds found the mess and instantly sounded the alarms. Now their mission was more complicated. They hadn't brought any backup and the weapons of Yusuke and Frankie were only going to help so much. Gundam squads were mobilized and were searching the area. As the group moved, they were spotted by a squad of mobile suits. The rescue team needed to get out quickly. They did the best they could to get out of the line of fire, but Suzaku was hit. It was a fatal shot. Suzaku knew that even if he was to escape, he wouldn't see tomorrow. Naruto went back to retrieve his friend, but Suzaku refused. If they stayed there any longer, they wouldn't make it out. "Go, Naruto. Leave me," he told the blonde Jinchuriki. "I can't just leave you here, Suzaku," Naruto pleaded, trying to pick his friend up. "I'll never make it, Naruto, and my time has come. You must promise me something. Protect her dream. Protect her dream of peace. It is up to you now," Suzaku managed as he coughed up blood. His time was coming soon. Naruto could only look at his friend as he was dying in his arms. Suzaku gave Naruto one last look, a look of hope. He'd passed away, peacefully, knowing that he could entrust Naruto with protecting Euphemia. For the first time in a long time, Naruto lost control. "You can take over, Kurama," he said as the fox smirked from within him. You can imagine what happened next. All I will say is that Char Aznable would never bother the Britannias or the Ryazanpaku alliance ever again. The rescue team returned back home, with Euphemia but missing Naruto. She was given immediate medical attention and wouldn't find out about Suzaku's death until she woke up a few days later. Naruto returned the next day, carrying the body of Suzaku, someone he considered one of his best friends, who accepted him for who he was. He didn't know how to react to losing one of his closest friends from the West. He also didn't know how he would explain this to Euphemia and how the loss of Suzaku would affect her. He shut himself in his room for a few days. He didn't eat, he didn't drink, he couldn't sleep. Luckily, he had his saving grace. Euphemia came to visit him after she finally recovered from her injuries. She sat with Naruto on the opposite side from him on his bed. The two didn't speak a word to each other. They both just stared off into space, just basking in the presence of each other. They both were missing something or someone. It was always the three of them, hanging out or getting on Lelouch's nerves. For Naruto, he loved having people he could be around who liked him for who he was and not people who hated him for something he couldn't control. For Euphemia, Suzaku was the first person she ever had feelings for. He was her knight and her closest confidant. She would never go anywhere without him, and because of that, the two had developed a sort of romantic relationship. Though they couldn't act on it because of Lelouch, the two enjoyed the times they spent together. With Suzaku now gone, Euphemia felt a part of her heart was ripped away, but she could also tell that Suzaku's death also heavily affected Naruto. Knowing his story, he never really had other people besides Jiraiya who he was close with. They were his first real friends and he didn't know how to really react. She needed to be by his side so that they could both grieve together. The two of them sat in Naruto's room for a few hours. With some inner strength and courage, Naruto moved first. He moved to Euphemia's side. He gave her a strong hug. She in turn immediately started to cry in his chest. She had lost a great friend, a person who sacrificed so much just for her. She cried and she cried. Naruto also teared up as he felt her tears soak up into his clothes. Euphemia cried until her tears ran out. Naruto was about to let her go, but she pulled herself back into him. She didn't want him to let go. She didn't want him to leave her, too. Pete, please, and Naruto. Don't let me go, she whispered. Naruto just held her tighter. I will never ever let you go, Yuffie. I'm never going to let you go until the day I die. I will go to the ends of the earth to protect you in your dream, Naruto told her. A funeral was held for Suzaku a week later when there was a break in the fighting. Many came to attend his funeral, especially from the Ryazanpaku alliance. They felt like they lost one of their own and took steps to ensure that they wouldn't lose another one again. Naruto watched the funeral proceedings from afar. He partly blamed himself for Suzaku's death as he was the one who came up with the plan in rescuing Euphemia. He couldn't help but feel responsible for hurting her too by failing to protect someone she had feelings for. Even after the moment he and Euphemia shared, he couldn't stand to look her in the eye. He needed his time alone and think things through before he could move on. After Suzaku's funeral, Euphemia visited Naruto again. She hadn't seen him since the embrace they shared together. He was staring out of the window when she entered his room. Though she couldn't see his face, she knew that he had not gotten any sleep for some time. She knew that he was taking this very hard, especially since she didn't see him at the funeral. She moved slowly towards him, but Naruto didn't move from where he stood. She wrapped her arms around him and felt his hands on hers. He was taller than her, so her head was leaning into his back. Naruto turned around slowly and returned the embrace. They stayed like this for a few minutes before either spoke. I do not and will not ever blame you for Suzaku's death, Naruto, Euphemia started as she looked up to see him staring off into the distance. She placed her palm on his cheek and forced him to look at her. Those words you told me a week ago, that you would protect me in my dream. I believe every word of it. Suzaku told me that if there was anyone who could help make my dream become a reality, it would be you, Naruto. You have grown so much in the short span that I have known you. You have surprised even Lelouch with your actions. I know you will miss Suzaku a lot, as will I, but he would want us to keep going until our dreams are achieved. Let's keep going together, Euphemia said as Naruto nodded in response. The two held each other for a bit longer before Euphemia finally departed for the evening. It was this speech that would start to snap Naruto out of his depression. This was also the day that their relationship changed to something more than just friends. Naruto and Euphemia had met up in his room every night since then. No matter if Naruto was on the front lines or he was training, Euphemia made it an effort to see him. Some nights they would talk and catch up. Naruto would tell her about the battles they had fought and so on and so on. Other nights they wouldn't say a single word to each other. They would just enjoy the company of the other. Over a few months, the two started to develop feelings for the other, and it started to become evident to the two that these feelings were only going to get stronger. Naruto didn't know how to feel about this, especially knowing that Euphemia and Suzaku had once had feelings for each other. He felt like he was betraying his brother, even though Suzaku was no longer alive. He didn't know how to go about this until one night, he had a very vivid dream. He was in a large garden flowing with life. On one of the benches in the garden, Suzaku sat, relaxing and taking in the amazing scenery. He noticed Naruto and called for him to sit next to him. Naruto cautiously approached Suzaku, who chuckled at the blonde's hesitance. "I'm not going yell at you like Lelouch, Naruto." Suzaku laughed as Naruto chuckled a little and took a seat to his best friend. After a few minutes of silence and looking around, Naruto broke. "I'm sorry, Suzaku. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I've been seeing Euphemia. Arg, it feels like I'm betraying you by having these feelings for her." Naruto said as Suzaku started to laugh really hard. Naruto was on edge because he didn't know what was going to happen. "Why are you apologizing, Naruto? You do realize that I am no longer alive, right? Euphemia can have feelings for whoever she wants, and so can you. Besides, I think it's time for both of you to move on," Suzaku said. "But you're someone who I consider like a brother. I shouldn't be having these feelings for someone you also had feelings for." Naruto responded, "Do not worry, Naruto. I have been watching you too. Watching the way you two interact with each other. I see the look in Euphemia's eyes when she looks at you. I can see her whole demeanor change when she is with you. She feels safe and secure. You two were meant for each other. Do not let me get in the way of both of your happiness," Suzaku said with a smile on his face. Naruto was still wary, and Suzaku could tell. Though we only knew each other for a short time in this life, we will be brothers for eternity in the afterlife. My last words to you were to protect Euphemia and make sure her dreams come true. You just started to do that and are already 10x better than me. I think now, you should make her dreams come true with you standing by her side till death do you two apart. You are her everything, Naruto, and I can see that she is starting to become your everything as well. Whatever decisions you two make, I will still love you both from the afterlife. I will be watching you both and can't wait to see what the future holds you two," Suzaku said as he shook Naruto's hand. "Remember, protect her with everything you have, and that will be enough for me," Suzaku said as he started to fade away. Naruto woke up immediately after and saw that the sun was peeking over the horizon. That dream, it felt so real, he thought. He took it as a sign that maybe these feelings for Euphemia were meant to be. He just hoped he wouldn't screw it up when the time came. In her room, Euphemia also awoke from nearly the same dream as Naruto. Was this Suzaku's way of telling her that she needed to move on? She started to feel that her and Naruto were meant to be and hoped she wouldn't screw things up either. With all of that said, Naruto still didn't know how to express his feelings yet, so Euphemia took the initiative and told him first. They were gazing at the stars on top of the roof of the Britannia Palace after dinner. The two sat close to each other, enjoying each other's warmth. It was then that Euphemia confessed to Naruto her feelings. Naruto reciprocated, albeit a bit nervously, as he fumbled with his words a bit. Euphemia got the message and they celebrated their first kiss that night. A little while after they became official, their relationship was known to only a few people. Lelouch was surprised by this but allowed it to happen. He had finally accepted Naruto, not only as a member of the family but also as a person. He saw the determination, loyalty, and leadership that Naruto displayed. Though he was young, Lelouch saw that Naruto would be a great leader in the future. Over a year later, even after finding love, Naruto still understood that there was a war to be won. The Ryazanpaku Alliance was officially joined by the Britannia Alliance and its allies. With their combined strengths, it was only a matter of time before they could finally end the war. The final battle came known as the Battle for the West. It was held in what is now known as the capital, the central city in the west. Naruto led the charge against the three remaining warlords that opposed the Ryazanpaku Alliance. Naruto and his allies routed the remaining warlords and chased them from their stronghold. The warlords surrendered and scattered their forces to spare their lives. The war was over. Now there could be peace. The day after they won, Naruto proposed to Euphemia in front of all of their friends and family. It was the happiest moment of both of their lives at that point. They married that week in a private ceremony, with their closest friends and family there, then celebrated with the civilians of the West, who cheered on their hero and showered him and his new bride with congratulations. Jiraiya, Hayato Furinji, and All Might were all those who were nominated to become emperor, but all declined. Naruto's new brother-in-law Lelouch was the final nominee to be chosen, but he also declined. He, along with the others who were nominated, supported the movement to allow Naruto to become emperor. He believed that the new era of peace should be guided by the person who spearheaded the idea. Naruto was eventually chosen as emperor of the United Western Empire. That, of course, made Euphemia the empress. She hated the title, but she knew that she could deal with it since now peace was achieved. She was just happy that the man she loved had finally achieved his dream, and would make sure that nothing would crush it. She watched Naruto become the one who made all of her dreams come true. Everyone always doubted him, yet he proved them all wrong. He was a hero to everyone, including herself. Present time, Euphemia couldn't believe how lucky she was when thinking back about her early memories of Naruto. Despite his youthfulness, Naruto had turned out to be a great leader. Even though he didn't always show it, Naruto was wise beyond his age. He was given much power but acted fairly. He surrounded himself with people he knew he could trust and were not corrupt. She supported him in everything he did. She couldn't wait for the day that the cause for her husband's sufferings would be eliminated. "Nei-chan, you can't reminisce all day. We have work to do," Nunnally said, snapping Euphemia out of her thoughts. "You are right, Nunnally. Let's get going," Euphemia responded as she put on her outfit for today and headed out to start her day. He must be discussing it now, she thought. The Konoha shinobi had not progressed very far. They were a large group, so sticking out was going to be a problem. They had to go undercover since they couldn't risk getting captured by enemy shinobi. It was going to take them at least a week to get to the west, as long as they didn't get caught along the way. Luckily, the west had granted them access to the merchant shops that were along the route the Konoha shinobi were going. Stopping so that they could eat and rest for a while was a godsend for them. They stopped at one of the larger merchant shops along their route. They had shown their official documents and also the letter from the emperor and were given rooms to stay in for a few hours. The group was very wary of Danzo, Sasuke, and Sai. They didn't like the fact that the old warhawk, his goon, and a traitor were among their group. They couldn't fuck this up or else they would most certainly lose the war. While the group was sitting down for lunch, they heard about the unification festival that was to happen as they got there. The group listened as a few messengers talked about being able to take a break from their work and enjoy some time with their families at the festival. They heard one of the messengers ask about the appearance of the emperor during the festivities, to which the other two answered in the affirmative. They mentioned that the emperor always made an appearance. This piqued the interest of Danzo and Sasuke. Both had fought the emperor previously and lost. Danzo, not being able to use his Sharingan to influence the emperor previously, wanted another shot. Not to mention that Danzo and Sasuke's pride was a bit hurt after getting their asses kicked by the emperor. They wanted revenge, something that they would probably never get. After a few hours, the entire Konoha group got moving again. They needed to gain an ally as soon as possible. However, they all had a feeling that something was going to go very wrong. Hope you guys enjoy first part of this story. Do like, share and subscribe.